White colonnades never failed to impress. As I walked further on, I spotted another vendor, selling a few Biden-Harris caps. A month ago, he said, these items were his meal ticket. Now they're worthless. Politics, I thought, is always a fickle business.
Regini Vaidyanathan. That's all for today. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. And you can hear more stories of the real lives behind the news headlines on the From Our Own Correspondent podcast. And we'll be back again next weekend here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme from our
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Look at that sunrise beckoning, just getting ready to the sun come up over the buildings in downtown Winnipeg. Beautiful orange line. Man, it is sticky and hot this summer in Winnipeg. Last night was just cooking. This morning, it's clear in downtown Winnipeg. It's 18 degrees in the city right now. Our high today is going to be a little bit more moderate. Our high today is going to be 23 degrees, still with humidex around 26. We're on air till 8:37 with Information Radio in the morning show. If you need us on the commute, 788-3093. The person who's going to be picking up the phone is going to be our director this morning, and Dylan Longhurst also covering the commute. Hi, Dylan. Good morning to Brad Lillies, who's also in the control room today, as well as Marshall Hodgins, who's behind the controls. Good morning, Marshall. 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. Of course, we have much coming up in the news as well. To tee that up with some headlines, here's Matt Humphrey.
Good morning. Strong winds yesterday ripped off parts of the arena in Foxwarren. The town is near the Saskatchewan border on Highway 16. People there are telling us many residents have memories wrapped up in the arena, and seeing it badly damaged is devastating. We'll hear more at the bottom of the hour. And Fertilizer Canada says its members have lost tens of millions of dollars due to the recent standstill at Canada's two largest railways. The work stoppage has now ended after the Labour Board ordered railways to resume operations and ordered employees back to work ahead of binding arbitration. But Fertilizer Canada says their ensuing financial damage could be passed on to consumers, and the rail stoppage damaged Canada's reputation as a trading partner. At 6:30, we'll hear from a rail worker here in Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Back soon.
Well, I mentioned the heat. In Winnipeg, clear right now, not bad. Victoria Beach is 19 degrees. I'm mentioning it because it's the hot spot in the province. We've got some mixed conditions. There's light rain into Dooley Lake this morning, and the cold spot in the province is Roblin at just 9 degrees. Well, on the program this morning, in the first hour of the show, health experts are arguing that empowering poorer countries, to develop their own health solutions is key for future pandemic readiness. So we're going to explore that a little bit as a topic. Locally, students at Red River College Polytech are heading back to class today for the start of a fall term. We'll find out how enrollment is looking and what new courses are being offered there as well that reflects the desires of students.
Tomorrow on Q. Tom Selleck's story is one that could only be told in Hollywood. Contestant on The Dating Game gets discovered. Next thing you know, he's starring in one of the biggest TV shows of all time.
I get unlimited use of the Ferrari.
Tom will be here to tell you about Magnum P.I. and what he remembers about working with Matthew Perry on Friends.
Chandler, I'm not scared of you.
Q with Tom Power. Tomorrow morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The federal government is considering curbing the number of temporary foreign workers entering Canada. Some researchers say a post-COVID surge has driven up youth and immigrant unemployment rates. It is one of the issues being addressed during this week's Liberal cabinet retreat in Nova Scotia. Kate McKenna has more from Halifax.
The landscape's changed.
Housing Minister Sean Fraser says Canada's labour needs have changed and soon the temporary foreign worker program will too.
But we don't see that acute labour shortage that existed even 2 years ago. So as the policy landscape, or rather the economic landscape changes, so too must the policy landscape.
The federal government relaxed restrictions on hiring temporary foreign workers in April 2022. Businesses were having trouble hiring after the pandemic. Fraser was immigration minister at the time. The government made it easier for companies to employ international workers in low-wage jobs. Then the number of temporary foreign workers in low-wage jobs grew from 15,000 in 2016 to more than 83,000 in 2023. Meanwhile, unemployment rates among immigrants and young people have crept up in recent months. Speaking ahead of this week's cabinet retreat in Nova Scotia, Fraser said the federal government is set to announce changes to the program.
Well, you have already seen and should expect to see in the future additional changes that will ensure that the programs we put in place to help grow the Canadian labour force, first and foremost, creates opportunities for Canadian workers.
He didn't say what those changes are or when they'll be rolled out. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Halifax.
In Pakistan. People walk around burnt-out vehicles on a highway in the Balochistan region. At least 39 people are dead overnight. Several gunmen attacked people on highways, railways, and police stations. Officials say people were pulled from their vehicles and buses, then executed. A rail line and police stations were also bombed. The militant group, the Balochistan Liberation Army, has claimed responsibility. The separatist group is one of many demanding independence from the central government in Islamabad. Militant groups have also targeted workers in the eastern province of Punjab, and Chinese operations, they say, are exploiting their resources. Ukrainian officials say Russia targeted 15 regions in this morning's aerial attack on the country. Air raid sirens sounding in Kyiv this morning. Hundreds of people are sheltering underground in metro stations. Local authorities say they shot down about 15 missiles and 15 drones targeting the capital. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia launched more than 100 missiles and about 100 drones across the country. Zelensky says energy infrastructure was particularly damaged. At least 3 people were killed in the attack. Iran's foreign minister is vowing to retaliate against Israel over the assassination of Hamas's leader. Israel has not confirmed nor denied its part in the bombing death of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last month. But Iran says its reaction will be measured and well calculated. This latest threat is raising fears of a wider regional war. Israel and Hezbollah traded intense airstrikes over the weekend. It was one of the largest exchanges of fire since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. The CBC's Sacha Petrusik has the latest from Jerusalem.
With the airstrikes and rocket launches that shook northern Israel and southern Lebanon calmed for now, the question is, will major attacks by Hezbollah return? The militant group called Sunday Phase 1, leaving its options open. In a televised speech, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said if the attack did not achieve sufficient results, Hezbollah reserved the right to strike again. The group fired more than 300 rockets and drones at Israel, though Israeli defense officials say thousands more would have been launched if it had not destroyed them in a preemptive strike. Based on advance intelligence, some from Washington. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
I can't speak directly to the conversations that unfolded yesterday, other than to say there was continuous communication, and we have been tracking the threat of Hezbollah attacks against Israel for some time now.
But the fear of escalation in Israel's north won't subside until there's a ceasefire in the south. And at the moment, that prospect in Gaza seems just as shaky. Sacha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The captain of the super yacht that sank off the coast of Sicily last week is now under investigation. British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter, and his associates were among the 7 people killed. The yacht went down during a storm a week ago. Italian prosecutors today confirmed they are looking into Captain James Cutfield. He's being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. 15 people survived, including Lynch's wife. Although a weather event had occurred at the time the ship sank, officials say crew negligence may have played a part in the deaths of those on board. Canada's north is feeling climate change more than just about anywhere else in the country. In the Northwest Territories, communities have experienced flooding, wildfires, and low water levels in recent years. And now they're facing a new problem, extreme heat. Sarah Kromolowski reports.
We couldn't stay outdoors. Something I've never seen in terms of heat.
Ray Rubin is the mayor of Powlatuck in the Northwest Territories, a hamlet on the northern Arctic coast that weeks ago recorded its highest ever temperature, 31 degrees Celsius. The mayor says it's worrying in a community where air conditioning is still very rare.
There's not too many ways that we can stay cool. We're geared to stay warm, against the cold and the winter elements.
Caroline Metz studies extreme heat at the University of Waterloo.
We're seeing more heat waves. They're more frequent. They are lasting longer. They're happening in places that didn't have them before.
In the north, heat can be more dangerous. Many people are far from hospitals, lack air conditioning, and already face high energy costs. But these communities do have one advantage.
Social cohesion is a really important factor for resilience.
Metz says heat-related illnesses can be prevented just by people checking in on each other, something small communities like Paulituk are already good at. With the heat this summer, many offices and gyms in the territory were turned into cooling centers, a model Ruben believes his community will soon need to adopt. Sarah Krymolowski, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Alaska's governor has declared a disaster. A landslide forced an evacuation in the southeastern coastal city of Ketchikan. It is a popular spot for tourists and is often a stop for cruise ships. Governor Mike Dunleavy says the landslide yesterday afternoon killed one person, 3 others were injured. Several homes and some infrastructure were damaged. Officials in Alaska say they are receiving support from all levels of government. Australians now have the right to ignore their bosses outside working hours. The right to disconnect law takes effect today. Workers are now protected if they do not want to monitor, read, or respond to contact from their employers outside work hours. More than 20 countries, mostly in Europe and Latin America, have adopted the right to disconnect. Freelance reporter Phil Mercer has reaction from Sydney.
I suppose it's a form of anxiety. You feel the phone ring and I don't think it's one of my friends or family. I think it's work. There is some expectation that I do pick up.
Australians are reacting to new rules saying they can now break free from the stress of after-hours calls and emails from work.
You should be able to come to an agreement with your boss whereby it can be amicable, but I do think generally today there is far more of an expectation for people to be contacted out of hours.
The new guidelines brought in by Australia's centre-left Labor Party will be enforced by the country's Fair Work Commission. Companies found in contravention will face hefty fines. However, there's still a grey area in some cases where bosses need to consider workers ignoring contact as reasonable. Brent Ferguson is from the Australian Industry Group.
What's reasonable or unreasonable is going to depend on the individual circumstances, and that uncertainty is part of the difficulty that industry is really grappling with at the moment.
Australian workers now have a right to disconnect, which is really awesome.
Sally McManus is the Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions.
Not all employers, but some employers have completely blurred or just crossed over those boundaries and are expecting people to be connected and answer their emails and look at their phones 24/7, and that's just not on.
The COVID pandemic and remote work setups blurred the lines between employment and private lives. Observers say Australia's right to disconnect law is an attempt to rebalance the working day. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good Monday morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We are live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube after a muggy night in Winnipeg. We will get into your current forecast for your Monday morning in a moment. The heat will let up a little bit today. Right now, though, it is 17 degrees in the city of Winnipeg. This hour on the show, 2 cyclists with Parkinson's disease are cycling across Canada. They're trying to defy the odds and bring awareness to the disease. We caught up with them on their pit stop in Brandon, so we'll hear that. Also, health experts argue that empowering poorer countries to develop their own health solutions is key for future pandemic readiness. But what does that look like? We're going to explore some strategies for better preparedness for health emergency like Mpox and ask how global health policies can adapt. So stay tuned for that conversation as well this hour. And girls in organized sports. We're going to talk about how the numbers are still not adding up and why. We had a really interesting conversation about this topic actually on our program with two former Manitoba Olympians, but this is going to look into some of the latest research in a new report, so stay tuned for that. It is right now 6:11, and Matt Humphrey is in with our headlines. Hi, Matt.
Good morning. A southwestern Manitoba community of fewer than 100 people is in shock after overnight storms damaged their local arena. The stormy weather damaged the arena in Fox Warren, which is just south of the town of Russell, not far from the Saskatchewan border. We'll hear from some people there at the bottom of the hour. And a Winnipeg senior says she's out thousands of dollars after paying for what seemed like a good deal on a driveway makeover, but when the so-called contractor was done, the work was shoddy and the driveway looked worse than it did before. Now she can't get a hold of the contractor and has had to file a police report. The Better Business Bureau says incidents like this are on the rise in our province. We'll hear from that family at the bottom of the hour as well.
All right, you have a good weekend, Matt?
It was delightful.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. I'm going to be sounding a little octave, but my voice usually goes about an octave lower when I'm tired and I stayed up late. People can always tell, but it was good reason. Hundreds of people packing for the
Block
the final
party.
night of the block party. Yeah, and
Was
the
it
weather
good?
held
It
up.
was good?
It was good, but do I look slimmer? Because I think I lost probably 20 pounds in
It's
sweat
warm.
last night. Wow,
What
it was
a
hot.
weather pattern that was.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And such a stark difference today.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
today, as Matt's alluding to, we're going to head a high of 23 degrees in Winnipeg, which is going to feel probably positively cold after what we've been having, but high of 23. It's going to have lots of sunshine though for our day, our Monday, and a mix of sun and cloud moving in this afternoon. So that's our forecast for Winnipeg. Just because it's the first time I'm doing weather here, I'll just touch the other centers. So Dauphin and Brandon area today, mix of sun and cloud, high 23 for you as well. In Thompson, mainly cloudy and a high of 19 degrees. And I should say specifically, Brandon is, just so you know exactly what Dauphin's going to be, 23. Current temperatures around the province beyond our 17 here in Winnipeg with that nice clear sky to watch the sun come up. If you like to take pictures, it's good morning for that. Brandon is 10 degrees. You're also clear this morning. In Dauphin, it is clear and 10 degrees as well. And up in Thompson, it is cloudy and it is 13 degrees. And big shout out to some of the people that drove in for the Burt block party last night from Thompson. I was dancing around with some of them late into the night last night. People making the drive and staying in hotels here. By the way, warm spot in the province is right now Churchill, which is 19 degrees, and your cold spot is Roblin at 7 degrees. And just looking for any different sky conditions, we did have early morning rain reported, but now it looks like everything's mostly either cloudy or clear. So the rain seems to have stopped. Let's get into the commuter, reminding you where you can update the commute. Dylan, good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Yeah, it's a lovely morning if you're driving there, although it feels darker than usual. I'm not usually on the show at this hour, so I'm
surprising, isn't it?
Kind of coming to terms with that. Not sure how I feel yet. As for out there on the commute, right now, nothing to really report. Haven't heard anything, so it should be smooth sailing. If you see something slowing you down out there, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
Well, as I alluded to at the top of the hour, they are cycling across Canada with a goal in mind. They want to show Canadians that you can kick Parkinson's disease in the butt by being active. Jim Redmond and Mike Logren both have the debilitating disease. They're part of the Spinning Wheels Relay. It's a relay made up of 3 teams. They're riding 10,000 kilometers to raise awareness about Parkinson's. So their team stopped in Brandon over the weekend, and they spoke with CBC's Chelsea Kemp about the freedom that the ride brings.
Hi, I'm Jim Redmond. I live in Ottawa, Ontario. I have Parkinson's disease. I'm a cyclist in the Spinning Wheels Relay and also a co-chair of the event.
What is the event?
So the Spinning Wheels Relay is a coast-to-coast-to-coast cycling adventure. I'm on the Western crew, which started in Victoria on July 27th, and we're going to finish in Ottawa on September 28th, about 5,500 kilometers in total. When we started on July 27th in Victoria, another group in the east started in Newfoundland, and they're cycling towards Ottawa as well. And then on September the 1st, a group is going to start in Dawson City, and they're going to cycle to Tuktoyaktuk. On September the 17th, all 3 groups are going to get together in a town in Ontario called Collingwood, and we're going to cycle as one team to Ottawa. You know what? So in 2022, I got it in my head that people with Parkinson's should cycle across the country just to raise awareness. My friend Mike Logren came with me. He has Parkinson's as well. So does a guy named Steve Eisman. He has Parkinson's. So 3 people with Parkinson's and Mike's wife. We went from Victoria to St. John's. It was such an amazing experience. We met so many people. And we felt so good. People kept on coming up to us and saying, you know what, you guys really have to do this again. Instead of ending in St. John's, we'll end in Ottawa. We actually have Parliament Hill booked on September 28th, and we are going to have a celebration of Parkinson's when we finally get there.
What do you hope people kind of learn when they meet you, see you guys cycling down Highway 1?
I think they'll learn that people can do more than what you think that you can. They're so surprised when we tell them the Parkinson's facts about the world. So Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. And Canada leads the world in per capita diagnosis. So there's just more Parkinson's in Canada than anywhere else. Parkinson's is set to double between 2020 and 2040 worldwide. We need to try to figure out how to live as best we can with the disease. So we're saying that cycling helps, and we believe in that message so much that we're actually cycling across the country. And we're inviting people to come out, whether it's for 1 block, 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 province. Just come on out and cycle with us. People have across the country so far, and we keep on hearing the word freedom. So when we get on our bikes, it's like we're free. And because lots of times with Parkinson's, you slow down and you get, you get tight, your muscles cramp. But when you get on a bike, there's just something about it it's like magic. It's magic, it's medicine, it's whatever, but it really does work. After about 10 minutes, I don't feel like I have Parkinson's anymore. It's that phenomenal.
How many kilometers do you usually go on a day?
So we average about 100 kilometers a day. Sometimes it's 110, sometimes it's 115, sometimes we do 96. But when we have needed to, we've done a couple hundred in a day. That's difficult. I mean, this is hard, right? The reality is this is hard. Like today, the wind was blowing. It kept the heat away and the rain away, but the wind was blowing. We've cycled in 37-degree temperature in British Columbia. We've cycled through the smoke. We've cycled in a little bit of rain. But every time we face a challenge, it's just like what we face with Parkinson's. You know what? You just keep on going. Have a positive attitude.
I'm Mike Logren. I'm part of the Spinning Wheels Relay and riding mostly in support this time, but enjoying it.
You're from Toronto. You started in Victoria, right?
Yes, we started in Victoria on the 27th. We left Toronto on the 15th of July, so it's the longest I've been away from my wife.
What keeps you motivated?
You got to really believe in what you're doing, and the chances we've had to speak to people, the support group people, they're finding inspiration, which I feel a little silly being someone like labeled as an inspirer or something, but they're finding the inspiration to that, and I don't mind driving that because it's how you can live best with this silly disease. It's a problem, it keeps going, there's no cure, but we got to do what we can to live best with it because your life's not over, that's for sure.
Do you find, does the cycling kind of help abate symptoms?
Yes, it does indeed. The riding, as I say, the freedom. I'm very much, when I get tired in that, I do a shuffle step. Very slow, that's all. I slow down, I start to hunker over, but when I'm riding, I can go fast. I can go and really enjoy myself and travel around the city, the country, whatever. And it's a great way to do it.
I love that. I love that he's saying he's not comfortable with being an inspiration, and yet. That was Spinning Wheels Relay cyclist Mike Logren speaking to CBC's Chelsea Kemp. Before that, we heard from Jim Redman, who's also on this ride, and Chelsea met up with them as they stopped in Brandon. Now, for more on their story and their ride and their efforts to raise awareness about Parkinson's, you can go to our website story at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
It is 6:21 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. And don't throw anything at your radio, but today's the first day back in school. It's true. I'm just reporting the facts. That is for students over at Red River College Polytech. At least the doors are going to be opening at the institution. So we're going to hear more about the fall term. We'll talk to the college's VP of Academics after 7 o'clock this morning to hear more about what students can expect this year, what the enrollment numbers are looking like, and what new courses have been popular over at Red River. Right now, though, the COVID-19 pandemic certainly revealed how healthy security across the globe is interconnected. And now as new strains of Mpox spread in Africa and beyond, the world is watching. Given Canada's supply of Mpox vaccines, many believe that our country has a moral responsibility to take action. As well, experts say that there's a need to strengthen local healthcare systems where Mpox is now on the rise. Rosemary McCartney is here to talk about it. She's Canada's former ambassador to the Office of the United Nations in Geneva. She is James Coutts Scholar in International Relations as well at the University of Toronto's Trinity College. Hello to you.
Good morning.
So looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, in your view, what are the key lessons that we might apply to the Mpox situation now?
Well, certainly the need to act early. So when the World Health Organization declares a public health emergency of international concern, as it did for COVID, and it has done again for Mpox, we need to move. It's not a wait and see how this might pan out kind of moment. And COVID moved faster than the decision makers. And so we saw that virus spread globally within 3 months. Viruses don't respect political borders whatsoever. And so acting fast is really the second one. We don't have perfect information and data and science on these viruses, but the precautionary principle in global health would say act quickly and understand and be transparent that information is imperfect, but waiting too long is also dangerous. And then acting means working both at home and acting internationally. So working at home is the things we did during COVID of tracing and protecting and providing people with good information on transmission. But acting internationally, we learned very clearly that to keep a regional epidemic from becoming a pandemic, we got to fight it at its heart where the cases are occurring and not kind of barricading ourselves behind kind of an ephemeral border and hoping it won't come here. So right now, the international effort is focused on stopping transmission in the affected countries in Africa, and particularly a focus on the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where the outbreak is really very tragic.
Of course, one of the criticisms of Western countries who had vaccines during COVID was that they kept them for their own populations, waiting to see what would happen and didn't share them early on enough. In hindsight, Canada has a supply right now of, as I mentioned, Mpox vaccines. As you see it, what's the responsibility that comes with that supply, and how do you think Canada should manage it?
Well, you're right. We have a stockpile, as do other countries. And you know, in an emergency outbreak that is going to affect more people crossing borders, vaccines should be treated very much as a global common good. So, you know, we know we have 24 time zones. We think of this as a big planet. But with viruses, we have one health zone, especially where there's over 100,000 international flights every single day. And so vaccines are just simply not available in the areas most affected right now. The demand is for about 10 million doses. And so while every country, every government has first duty to protect our own citizens, Canada can play an important role in helping to stop the Mpox outbreak by donating some of our vaccine stockpile today to the hard-hit countries without resources. You know, we can fight Mpox at its heart, and we can also prepare and protect Canadians. We can do both at the same time. And national self-interest is got to be acknowledged. It won't go away. But we can also embrace humanitarian and equity principles too. We can share money, vaccines, data, know-how. Enlightened self-interest is also a very powerful tool to stop spread everywhere.
I don't want to take us on too much of a tangent, but I wonder whether or not, because we've just been through this pandemic, which was historic, and now we're talking about, trying to prevent future spread of other diseases in the same ways and other strains as well. I do wonder whether or not you think that we may be heading into a world where distribution of vaccines should be seen through a global lens and not through a country lens. Like that shift, of course, I can't imagine countries agreeing to doing that, but that's really what you're talking about at its heart, is that?
Well, the best way for us to protect ourselves and protect Canadians is through prevention. And we can still do preparedness. This is a slower moving virus than COVID was, and so we need to take advantage of that. But prevention is probably the best investment we can make. And so, stopping transmission at its heart, where the outbreaks are, is probably our best tool for protecting Canadians. So rather than think about vaccines and whether we can share some, whether we have extras, et cetera, it's all of the above. And vaccines are only one tool in the toolbox, but they're a critical one. We didn't have them at the beginning of COVID, and we're fortunate to have a couple of vaccines and more coming on stream. But there's many things that we can do that allows us to both protect Canadians and move very assertively and generously internationally to strike Mpox at its heart. So we don't have this runaway global pandemic, which cost the world millions of lives and trillions of dollars. It's time to act is right now.
Beyond vaccine distribution, in what other ways do you think that global health policies should still be evolving beyond where they were at the start of COVID?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, we need to put money into surveillance and monitoring. We need to put money right now into testing. We have no real idea about the volume of Mpox. Most of our people are not being tested. We need to address things like stigma and discrimination of those who are afflicted by this. There's things that we can do, but fundamentally, we need global leadership from presidents and prime ministers that break this cycle of, neglect. Let's hope it doesn't come here, and then panic, where we watch, panic buying up of stockpiles and supply chains shutting down, et cetera. We need that strong coordination of a standing group of presidents and prime ministers who can keep a watch on global health threats and mobilize the funds so that each time we're not kind of in a pass the hat kind of syndrome of, could you provide some vaccines? Could you provide some money? And this passing the hat reactive place when we have an emergency is just counterproductive. And the other thing we need to do, to be really frank, is that these are coming at us every 3 to 5 years. We don't have that luxury of a world of remote places, et cetera. We know that with international travel, with the proximity to animal-human transmission, that these are going to keep coming at us. And they not only impact health, but they impact all of society, trust in government, our economies, et cetera. So we need to get a handle on thinking about health as one health, one planet, and we're kind of all in this together. And acknowledge that we can embrace humanitarianism and equity, and we can embrace self-protection.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
That's Rosemary McCarney. She's Canada's former ambassador to the Office of the United Nations in Geneva. She's a James Coutts Scholar as well in international relations at the University of Toronto's Trinity College. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Welcome to your Monday morning, everyone. Mainly clear out there in Winnipeg. The full forecast for all the regions coming up after your news. I will mention we also have business news coming up. Phil DeMont's in this morning. Now, we're about to hear a bit about this from Matt, but we will get some more analysis on our business report today about what is happening with the rails getting, back on the rails today after that brief stoppage. So we'll get some more analysis. First, though, let's get the headlines and basic stories in the news with Matt Humphrey.
This is CBC News.
Thank you, Marcy. At 6:30, it's cloudy and 13 degrees in Thompson, 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good morning. A thunderstorm caused serious damage to the hockey rink in the town of Fox Warren near the Saskatchewan border. Danny Johnston says the storm ripped off one side of the roof and most of the damage is on the east side of the building. He says seeing the arena ripped up was gut-wrenching.
It's the only damn building left in town here that was still somewhere to gather and play hockey and figure skate and stuff. That was one of the shittiest things I've ever come across. We grew up here, born and raised here, and the only thing to do in the wintertime was go to the rink. That's all we did. That's our lifeline here.
Johnston says the storm started early in the morning yesterday. The wind snapped trees and branches, and the province says the highway at Fox Warren Access Road was closed off due to debris. A Manitoba rail worker is disappointed after a ruling forced him and thousands like him back on the job. Canadian Pacific Kansas City trains began moving again in Manitoba last night ahead of a federal labor board deadline. Days earlier, workers walked off the job to demand better working conditions, grinding shipments across the country to a halt. Matthew Yanchuk is a member of the Teamsters Union in Winnipeg. He says the ruling tramples on his right to strike.
We're being sent back to work without a chance of our legislators getting involved to have a debate about back-to-work legislation. We have a difficult working environment with difficult scheduling, and that leads to a lot of conflict. We're obviously trying to have the best quality of life we can.
Meanwhile, the union says it will fight this decision in court. Unions are calling on the Workers' Compensation Board to ease its policies around worker burnout. Only 3 out of 21 claims have been accepted by the board since it started covering psychological injuries caused by burnout. The Manitoba Nurses Union calls the numbers shameful. Darlene Jackson is union president.
I think we need to talk about the real consequences of burnout. We have nurses who are working with workloads that far exceed anything we've ever seen before. There's a cost to a publicly funded healthcare system. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if this government is willing to pay that cost.
The Manitoba Federation of Labor says barriers for accessing compensation are just too high. It's calling on the board to expand what they'll accept as medical documentation, for example. In international news, Hezbollah is warning further strikes on Israel are possible following a weekend of stepped-up rocket exchanges. Sasha Petrusik has the latest from Jerusalem.
In a televised speech, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said if the attack did not achieve sufficient results, Hezbollah reserved the right to strike again. The group fired more than 300 rockets and drones at Israel, though Israeli defense officials say thousands more would have been launched if it had not destroyed them in a preemptive strike based on advance intelligence, some from Washington. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
There was continuous communication, and we have been tracking the threat of Hezbollah attacks against Israel for some time now.
But the fear of escalation in Israel's north won't subside until there's a ceasefire in the south. And at the moment, that prospect in Gaza seems just as shaky. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And finally, a Winnipeg family is warning others that if a contractor shows up to your door with a good deal, it might be just too good to be true. Patricia Gunter says her mother paid $3,000 for a driveway makeover. A half day's work was done, and it was left in a concrete mess, with the cracks hardly filled. You can see photos at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Now, Gunter says they can't get a hold of anyone from the company and have had to file a police report.
I love my mom, but these people that are out there, it seems like they're taking advantage of the seniors and young people because they're coming to people's houses with good quotes. Like I even saw the price of $3,000. I thought, oh, wow.
The Better Business Bureau says incidents like these are on the rise in our province and says contractors will purposely do poor jobs or no work at all sometimes under the guise of offering a must-have deal. Winnipeg police say they're investigating reports of similar incidents. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
That's the worst.
Yeah, it's too bad.
It is. It's too bad. Because when you're the consumer of something like that, it's always a job that you either need done and it's a drag because you have to find the money to do it. Or maybe you've been saving and waiting to do something, an improvement on your property.
And it can be really hard to find a contractor.
Yeah.
There's a long backlog for that kind of work.
All right, Matt. Thank you.
Back soon.
6:35 a.m. Monday morning. All right, let's get into a regional forecast here. In Winnipeg, sunny today. It's going to be a high of 23, a little cooler than we've had, to say the least. Yesterday was just sticky. Today, not as much. Winds will become northwest, 20 to about 40 this morning. For the rest of the week, tonight, partly cloudy, low 11. Tomorrow, some cloud cover and 20. Wednesday, sunny, 24. And then some showers moving in Wednesday night. Right now in Winnipeg, it's 17 degrees and mainly clear. In Brandon, it's mainly clear and it's 10 degrees. Today for you, same as Winnipeg, high of 23 with humidex 26. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 9. Should mention, Brandon, you'll be a little less windy than here in the city of Winnipeg. For you tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud, high 20. And then once again, you're also expecting some showers moving in for Wednesday, so there's a system coming. In Brandon currently, it's 10 as mentioned. And up in Thompson, finally cloudy and 13 degrees right now. Winds are northwest at 50. And for you today, you will have those gusty winds staying with you. So mainly cloudy up in Thompson, winds northwest 30 to 50 for most of the day. Your high 19 degrees, so that cool trend continuing in the north part of the province as well. Tonight, a few clouds. Tomorrow, a little sunny and a high of 20. So tomorrow, we're actually pretty similar across the province. And then on Wednesday, though, for you, you don't have showers until Wednesday night, Thompson. So you'll be similar to Winnipeg. You'll be sunny in the day with showers at night on Wednesday. And that's what at least the start of the week's looking like. As mentioned, right now, you're 13 degrees. Let's get into the commute details at 6:36 now with Dylan Longhurst.
Yeah, there's not much to say so far, although it is still very, very early in the morning for that commute. So if you're seeing something out there that's slowing you down, however you're getting around, biking, walking, busing, driving, it's not a bad day to be an active commuter, a little bit on the cooler end of what we've been seeing recently. But yeah, however you're getting around, let us know what's happening out there on the roads. Call 204-788-3093.
Particularly if you're up around the Gimli area. I heard unsubstantiated buzz last night at the Burt Block party, but people were driving in. I was talking to someone that drove in from Thompson, but they said that they were noticing some detours and things up around Gimli when they were in that stretch of their drive because of the storm over the weekend. So there might be some washouts and things out there that are localized.
Yeah, feel free to share your experiences there. I'll be standing up by on the commuter line.
All right, thanks, Dylan. So 788-3093 is that number once again. It's time to get caught up on business news now. Phil DeMont joins us. Good morning, Phil.
Hi, Marcy.
So Matt was just mentioning a little bit of this, of course, in the news. It's a big story, but there have been developments in Canada's rail stoppage then.
Yeah, it's more of an update than anything, but railways say it's going to take more than a week before the trains can get running normally. Confusion stemmed over the weekend, at least in my mind, from the Teamsters Union, who represents the engineers and conductors at CN and CPKC. On Friday, late Friday, it issued a 72-hour strike notice against CN. That's after the Canada Labour Relations Board issued that binding arbitration order ending the one-day stoppage at Canada's two main railways. The puzzlement surrounded the fact that the companies had locked out the workers who technically weren't on strike. So, in effect, great, we'll let we'll stop the lockout, but hey, we might go on strike. And over the weekend, the union said its members would go back to work on Monday, which apparently they have. CN, though, says it'll take an entire week before its vehicles can get back on track. Both railways eased back on the number of trains and shipments days before Thursday's lockout. You don't just shut it down in one motion. CPKC was even more pessimistic, saying a full return to work could take, quote, several weeks. Moody's estimates rail stoppage costs the Canadian economy about $340 million a day. That's led to calls for Canada's railways to be named an essential service and forced into binding arbitration. Problem is, neither management nor the union wants that. If you face binding arbitration, why do you need a union and have to pay union fees? They're not going to be able to negotiate for you. For management, their concern is the arbitrator, good people, but often they're coming out of academia or some law firm. They have a limited knowledge of the sector. So that could well end up in a situation where workers get a better settlement than the company wants. Because if you come in and say, look, my members haven't had a decent wage gain in 5 years, okay, as opposed to the company coming in and saying our investors haven't gotten the rate of return commensurate with the S&P 500, little less of a compelling reason for an arbitrator to give you your settlement.
To another story, why are high prices for land a problem for farmers right now?
Yeah, it's a problem that isn't obvious, at least to me, until I think about it in terms of home prices in cities. Farm valuations have exploded in Canada in the past few years. In Saskatchewan, just because I have this number, price per acre for farmland up 16%. Same in Manitoba. If you look at the Central Plains, Pembina Valley, the price for an acre there up almost 30% in 2 years.
Wow. Is that right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I managed to track that one and then pronounce Pembina properly. a combination of different pressures. In some cases, the value of seeded crop is higher, the commodity issue. In others, development pressures from expanding towns and cities. This is a big deal in Ontario, so they're buying up that land. In 2001, 68 million acres were farmed in Canada, about 250,000 families. Now, about 9% fewer less farmland available, 25% fewer families. So you only gain the higher price if you sell the land. It's like a home in a city. Older homeowners benefit from the higher prices, but younger farmers, let's say, who got another 25, 30 years on the land, they might be looking to expand their acreage because more production reduces your fixed costs, make your operation more competitive. But experts say larger farming companies, the ones with financial resources, are buying up what little farmland is available. The younger people getting squeezed a bit on that end, much like younger home buyers can't afford new homes, younger farmers can't afford new acreage.
And finally, why is the shine finally off of Steve McQueen's Ford Mustang?
Yeah, I looked for a way to put that in a question. It's a car McQueen made famous in the iconic car chase scene for the 1968 movie Bullitt. Really cool scene. 2020, it sold for $3.7 million. But the value of roadsters from the 1950s and 60s is dropping these days, whether it's McQueen's car or the Aston Martin of James Bond fame. And you can blame younger car collectors. Monterey Car Week was held earlier this month. It's the main auction where rich hipsters buy cars that they basically put in their garages and never use. Less than 75% of the cars up for sale actually sold in Car Week. Lackluster sales meant the gross amount from the auction down 20% from 2 years earlier. It's a sign of the changing car collector. Younger ones with more money, but little connection to the cars that were cooler for an earlier generation. Things like the Chevy from the movie American Graffiti. For younger collectors, they all look the same. And that shifting and interest has been in there for a while. If you look at the price index for classic cars from the 80s, after the 80s, it's up 60% compared to 2018. If you look at the roadsters built in the 50s and 60s, their prices down 3%.
Interesting. Also, gas guzzling, right? And it's just an expensive pastime. So the economy is so poor, I suspect that's part of it too.
Yeah, no, you're probably right.
Yeah. But I hear you. Down 3% compared to the 80s, still up 60%. It just speaks to the generational shifts, right? Yeah. So what car was driven in most of the iconic 80s movies? We'll have to look up that value.
Yeah, I know. It's probably something that you're looking for. Jesus, really? Somebody likes that car?
I don't know. When was the Rockford Files? Was that the 70s? The fire?
I guess so, but that's one of those. That was like not a Firebird, but one of those kind of cars.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what's going on in the markets this morning?
Generally positive in Europe. UK, France, they're up. Germany down marginally. Good day in China with the Hong Kong market up 1%. Oil up $1.98 because of Middle Eastern unrest, $76.81 a barrel. Gold's up $13. Possible rate cut there in the U.S., $2,559 U.S. an ounce. And the Canadian dollar, it's trading above 74 cents. That's 74 4/100ths of a cent U.S.
All right, Phil DeMont, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Phil DeMont from our business desk. Well, last week on the show, we were hearing on national news about a decision out of Ontario. Ontario's health minister announcing plans to close half of the supervised consumption sites in that province while increasing spending on homelessness and addiction treatment centres by nearly $400 million. And so one of the things that Ontario's health minister announced when he was closing sites was talking about closing sites near schools and daycares. You might know that here in Manitoba, our Premier Wap Kinew, the Premier here, Wap Kinew, has said that as we await for a new consumption site to be built in Winnipeg. The site is not yet chosen. We know it's going to be somewhere north of Main Street is what we've been told so far. And we do know that he has said, at least on record, that they are considering where they're going to put it when it comes to, it having proximity to places like schools and daycares. But this has all opened up a conversation, not just in Ontario and here in Manitoba, but across the country. And so CBC's CrossCountry Checkup asked callers this weekend, how do you feel about supervised consumption sites in your community? And should there be restrictions on where they're located? Here's what some callers shared with guest host John Northcott.
I'm extremely disappointed that Ontario is going in this direction. I believe that we need a full range of services available for people, which absolutely includes a robust harm reduction component. The route to recovery is often through harm reduction. I know that was the case for a family member of mine. Harm reduction keeps people alive until they're able to access other services. As soon as we start pushing people out, the risk goes way up for death. I've been to probably 20 different memorial services for young people over the past, since the crisis was announced in 2016. I don't want to go to any more of those services. I want people to live another day to reach the potential of their lives.
My girlfriend has an addiction problem, and she uses a place in Fredericton. And there's been times I've had to carry her out of there. You know what? I've tried a lot of different things with her to get her clean. And, I've had her clean for a couple months at a time. But I think more rehab centers and, not 3 months, 6 months, 10 months, 2 or 3 years. It's not something you can get over overnight. This is a lifelong struggle. I myself had an addiction problem. I've been clean for 30 years. It's a lifelong struggle. There's not a day that goes by I don't, want it, but I just choose not to.
My 4-year-old grandson will be starting kindergarten in September. We worked very hard to find a school that was in a neighborhood where we would not be thinking about him seeing addiction. My heart goes out to those people, and I want to see things better, and I don't believe Doug Ford knows what the heck he's talking about, just shutting down sites cold turkey. My point is, I'm a grandmother. I want my grandson to be safe, and I think there's a lot of parents who are thinking the exact same thing. We get the big issues, but we don't want it in our child's face.
I'm almost a year sober. The one thing I wanted to raise is that one of the things they came out with in the year 2020 were stats around deaths related to drugs. Number 1, tobacco. Number 2, alcohol. And number 3, opioids. What I find disheartening, in addition to, of course, closing supervised injection sites, is that the government is spending at a minimum $225 million to bring availability and accessibility to alcohol to even more places. And there are no restrictions, unlike cannabis stores and now proposed supervised injection sites, for locations to schools and other things. I had to leave the province to seek treatment because the wait times here in Toronto are approximately a year. And instead, $225 million is being pumped into the beer store and soon to be others to expand access to the second most deadly drug. And I'm really concerned that no opinions of public health experts or researchers is there to persuade the government that their course of action will kill people.
To build on that last point, if you're interested in doing some reading, we've had Gabor Mate on our show before, and he's written some really interesting books before, talking about what he calls, acceptable addictions and substances versus others that are vilified. And it speaks to sort of how governments end up responding to different things. That is his argument in his books, and you can read some of his research. But those were some of the callers over the weekend from CrossCountry Checkup, responding to the question yesterday that was asked on CBC nationally: how do you feel about supervised consumption sites in your community? If you want to download the whole conversation, you can find it on their Checkup podcast or on the CBC Listen app. And of course, we'd love to know what your thoughts are in Manitoba as we creep ever closer to our first supervised injection site, consumption site rather, here in Winnipeg. That's going to be that's in the works right now, going to be developed. You can call our local listener line if you'd like. It's 788-3205.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
Time right now is 11 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's look at our forecast briefly here. 17 and calm in Winnipeg. It's mainly clear out there. And our high today is going to be 23, so a bit of a reprieve from that sticky, really crazy heat that we've been having. And it is right now going to be, right now calm and clear as mentioned, but it's going to be sunny in Winnipeg. It will be a little bit windy. Winds will be northwest this afternoon, gusting 20 to 40. Well, up next on the show, professional women's sport leagues and female athletes are gaining visibility. Even so, sports participation on the part of girls in Canada is on the decline. And that's according to data examined by our next guest. A recent study featured in The Conversation, a research-based news platform, highlights that sports are vital for a girl's success later in life. And such participation can be a strategic tool for equity between women and men. But there are systemic barriers that keep many girls out of sport. Michaela Dodig is with us, co-author of the paper. She's a master's student in the Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University. Good morning to you. Oh, we're having a challenge getting our guest here, so we'll just give it a moment here and see if we can get Michaela on the line with us this morning. I'll mention a couple things in the meantime that we have coming up on the program in the second hour of the show. Speaking of sport, there was something super fun going on over the weekend, and CBC was there. So coming up at 7:40 this morning, we're going to hear about the Alumni Running It Back tournament that happened over the weekend. It reignited high school basketball rivals in a game of who's best. So how did the players hold court? We'll find out because the CBC's Jim Agapito was there. And now here with us is Michaela Dodig. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what led you to start this research?
Yeah, so I played sports throughout my whole life, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about what are the long-term impact of women's sports participation in sports. And what really caught my interest was this big sticky stat that Ernst & Young came out with in 2014 that 94% of C-suite executive level women were former athletes. So I wanted to dig in. I knew something special about participating in sports, and I wanted to look into a little bit more about what those long-term benefits are.
In the short term, though, the stats on girls' participation in organized sport in Canada look grim. Can you just reiterate to us some of those stats?
Yeah, so sports participation among girls in Canada are declining. So we know that 62% of girls are not participating in sports of any kind, and this number has been declining for the past decade. When girls reach adolescence, we see that 1 in 3 girls are dropping out of sports, and this is compared to 1 in 10 boys. And so this is concerning. Girls are not participating in sports as much, and this number is declining over time, but also as they get older.
What kind of impact has the growth of professional women's league had on the country, would you say, to look at this from through a lens of what is helping?
Yeah. So I think bringing professional women's sports to Canada is great. And I think it's only going to help grow the game and grow women's sports participation. Because when we bring professional sports and seeing women here in Canada, we increase our accessibility to watch them. So we are able to watch women's sports on TV. We can watch them in person in stadium and get tickets to go to the game. And we're able to just really highlight the elite talent that women athletes have. And then we can kind of see, like girls can see that there is an opportunity for them to play professional sports if that's what they want and take their game to the next level because there is an opportunity to pursue a career in sports.
I neglected to follow up when you were talking about sort of the high women in sort of professional jobs. 94% of women, as your study says, hold C-suite executive level positions that were former athletes you were mentioning earlier. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how participating in sport can affect a girl's long-term success or woman's long-term success and development?
Yeah, so a lot of that from that study came from that. And we even see Deloitte continue some of this research too, is that girls who are going on and leading in the corporate world are honing their skills that they learned, or the skills that they've learned, like their leadership skills, resilience, discipline, work ethic. They're attributing their career success to those skills that they've learned through sports. So sports is a great way to foster and to really build on the skill set that helps you later on in life, both personally and also in your career.
We had on this topic actually a couple of weeks ago on the show, we had 2 former Olympic athletes from Manitoba on the program, both women. They now are in leadership roles in their sports in Manitoba, and they were talking about, how in their view that's needed to turn the tide on this. What are the reasons that you found about why girls do drop out of sport?
Yeah, so it's been studied that there are several barriers to girls participating in sports, and some of this is accessibility and not knowing or not having the opportunity to play or not knowing where or when. And then the other big thing is the cost of participating. So the costs are becoming really high to participate in sports, especially at the high performance level. So it's important that we ensure that opportunities for girls to play sports are accessible and also just available. And then girls in particular, now we see that dropout rate happening when they get into their teenage years. And it's important that we encourage girls to be confident and empowered through sports because they do have a perceived lack of skill or lack of confidence when they get to that age, or there's negative body image. So it's important that we do really empower women to feel empowered in their bodies to continue playing on and continue to have positive and inclusive social connections with their peers and through their role models and coaches.
What did sport do for you? We've got this picture up on our YouTube of you in your jersey from playing university basketball. So I'm curious for yourself, how did it speak to you and strengthen your resolve and leadership skills?
Yeah, so I was a basketball player and played at university, and I made some of my best friends through sport and really found my voice on the court as a leader and being able to effectively communicate to my teammates and my coaches and the staff, and really just develop that sense of teamwork and resilience to come back from different challenges and setbacks. So definitely my experiences of sports have helped me achieve my goals, both on the court, but also in my schooling, but also and into my career aspirations. So it's really helped set me up to achieve my goals outside of sport as well.
So given that, just in our last minute here, what strategies do you think are most important moving forward to keep girls engaged in sport throughout their lives?
Yeah, so it comes back to that creating that inclusive, accessible experience and encourage parents to enroll their daughters into sports so that they can realize these benefits and really encourage them and support them while they go through this sport journey. And just encourage coaches to create these positive experiences, good quality coaches who are trained or they're positive role models. And even more, we have people who are involved in sports that look like us, whether it's girls participating. If they have people and role models that look like them, they can see a future for themselves. So creating these opportunities and inclusive girl-centric sport experiences, and so that these girls can realize the success both in their sports, but also develop these skills that they're going to use later on in their personal and professional lives.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Michaela. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
That is Michaela Dodig. She's a master's student in the Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University. She's been studying the lack of participation of girls in sport. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, and Matt Humphreys in with our Monday headlines.
Good morning. Winnipeg police are asking you keep a lookout for 76-year-old George Surmay. He was last seen in the North Kildonan area around 8 last night. He's 5'4" with a medium build and gray hair and blue eyes. And you can see Surmay's photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And people in Manitoba's agricultural sector say they're glad they're once again able to ship their product. Thousands of rail employees are being ordered to return to work, even as railways warn full resumption of services could take weeks. More news after World Report.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
In the forecast today, we find a cooler day ahead for our Monday. Sunshine in our forecast for Winnipeg, a high of 23, and winds will be northwest 20 to 40. Right now it's 17 and winds are calm, and it is mainly clear. Really pretty morning, actually, if you're out on the commute. Whether you're biking or walking or driving this morning, it should be pretty good. Dylan's popped in with headphones on. Everything's still good out there?
Yeah, everything's still fine. We're not really hearing much happening out there on the roads, although it's still very early, but a lovely day to be out there. I'm kind of looking forward to maybe an after show walk myself. So kind of a nice day out there compared to our humid weekend. So
agreed.
If you see something out there on your commute, maybe you're walking around, see something slowing down the roads, call 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. And in the next hour of Information Radio, students at Red River College Polytech are heading back to class this morning. It's the start of the fall term. We're going to speak with the college's VP of Academics about what students can expect this year, what their enrollment numbers are looking like, and also there's some new courses that are being offered over there that we'll find out about. In the next hour as well, high school basketball alum from all over Winnipeg balled their way to the top spot in the basketball court. We'll find out more about a tournament that was held this weekend. CBC was there. And at 10 to 8 this morning, a local organization says it can be especially hard this time of year for young people who lived in CFS care to get back to school. And we'll find out more about that transition and some of the concerns in community about it. Some of the barriers, but also some of the organizations that are helping make that transition easier. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. We've got Brad Lillies and Dylan Longhurst and Marshall Hodgins behind the glass this morning. Stay with us. World Report's coming up next. It's 1 minute to 7.
Today on The Current.
Not everything is just about polls in the next election. Some people actually do want to get some stuff done.
I'm Susan Ormiston. The Liberal cabinet is getting together to talk about the rail stoppage, the cost of living, and their own political future. Our National Affairs panel brings us up to date on this summer's hot politics. Coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Ukraine's Air Force says Russian attack drones are still flying over the country's airspace this morning. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has so far launched more than 200 drones and missiles. More than 15 cities were targeted, including the capital, Kyiv, with power and water supplies cut. Anna Cunningham is following the latest from London.
This was the moment a missile hit a reservoir near the capital, Kyiv. In a video address, President Zelensky said this was one of the biggest combined strikes targeting critical civilian infrastructure. Regional authorities reported casualties in western Lutsk, eastern Dnipro, Kharkiv in the northeast, and southern Zaporizhzhia regions. In Kyiv, hundreds sheltered underground in the city's subway network as air raid sirens sounded. Power and water supplies have been disrupted in parts of the city. The Kremlin has said that Ukraine's incursion into the Kursk region was hostile action that could not be left without a response. Whether this is its response at this stage is unclear. The wide-scale attack comes 2 days after a missile strike on a hotel in the eastern city of Kramatorsk, close to the front line, killed a British man. Former soldier Ryan Evans was a security advisor for the Reuters news agency. He was killed and 2 other Reuters employees injured. In a statement, the news agency said it was devastated and was urgently seeking more information about the attack. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
In Pakistan. People walk around burnt-out vehicles on a highway in the Balochistan region. At least 39 people are dead. Overnight, several gunmen attacked people on highways, railways, and in police stations. Officials say people were pulled from vehicles and buses, then executed. A rail line and police stations were also bombed. The militant group, the Balochistan Liberation Army, has claimed responsibility. The separatist group is one of many demanding independence from the central government in Islamabad. The federal government is considering curbing the number of temporary foreign workers entering Canada. Some researchers say youth and immigrant unemployment rates have increased since the beginning of the pandemic. It is one of the issues being addressed during this week's Liberal cabinet retreat in Nova Scotia. Kate McKenna has more from Halifax.
The landscape's changed.
Housing Minister Sean Fraser says Canada's labour needs have changed and soon the temporary foreign worker program will too.
But we don't see that acute labour shortage that existed even 2 years ago. So as the policy landscape, or rather the economic landscape changes, so too must the policy landscape.
The federal government relaxed restrictions on hiring temporary foreign workers in April 2022. Businesses were having trouble hiring after the pandemic. Fraser was immigration minister at the time. The government made it easier for companies to employ international workers in low-wage jobs. Then the number of temporary foreign workers in low-wage jobs grew from 15,000 in 2016 to more than 83,000 in 2023. Meanwhile, unemployment rates among immigrants and young people have crept up in recent months. Speaking ahead of this week's cabinet retreat in Nova Scotia, Fraser said the federal government is set to announce changes to the program.
Well, you have already seen and should expect to see in the future additional changes that will ensure that the programs we put in place to help grow the Canadian labour force, first and foremost, creates opportunities for Canadian workers.
He didn't say what those changes are or when they'll be rolled out. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Halifax.
Railways across the country are getting back on track this morning. The 2 main rail companies and the union representing workers were quickly forced into arbitration. Labour Minister Steve McKinnon is in Halifax for the Liberal cabinet retreat. He says sending the dispute to the Canada Industrial Relations Board is for all Canadian workers.
We made a decision that was in the interest of Canadian workers. In fact, it's hard to remember a decision that was made more in the interest of Canadian workers when you think of shutdowns in potash mines, when you think of car plants running out of inventory.
The Teamsters Union says workers will comply with the CIRB's back-to-work ruling, but it has vowed to appeal the ruling to a federal court. The captain of the luxury yacht that sank off the coast of Sicily last week is now under investigation. Italian prosecutors say they're looking into his role in the deaths of 7 people, including a Canadian chef. Megan Williams has the latest.
Italian prosecutors have placed New Zealander James Cutfield under investigation for multiple manslaughter and causing a shipwreck. The 51-year-old was the captain of the luxury yacht that sank off the coast of Sicily in the early morning hours last Monday after being hit by a powerful storm. 15 people survived and 7 died, among them Canadian Antiguan chef Ronaldo Thomas and British tech billionaire Mike Lynch and his 18-year-old daughter Hannah. As locals held a vigil for the victims last night, laying wreaths in the water, the investigation narrowed to focus on the captain. Under maritime law, the captain is fully responsible for the ship, crew, and all on board. Investigators will be looking for proof of negligence, with reports here in Italy that the boat may have taken on water because the hatch was left open and the keel, which helps provide stability, was not fully down. There are also questions as to why all crew members, except for the chef, were able to save themselves while passengers remained trapped inside. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
1 person has died and 2 others are missing in southern Iceland. An ice cave partially collapsed. Officials say a group of tourists were exploring ice caves in a popular glacier when the ice around them began to crack. It triggered a collapse. Crews are expected to arrive today to help find 2 people who are still missing. Canada's north is feeling climate change more than just about anywhere else in the country. In the Northwest Territories, communities have experienced flooding, wildfires, and low water levels in recent years. And now they're facing a new problem, extreme heat. Sarah Kromolowski reports.
We couldn't stay outdoors. Something I've never seen in terms of heat.
Ray Rubin is the mayor of Paulatuk in the Northwest Territories, a hamlet on the northern Arctic coast that weeks ago recorded its highest ever temperature, 31 degrees Celsius. The mayor says it's worrying in a community where air conditioning is still very rare.
There's not too many ways that we can stay cool. We're geared to stay warm, against the cold and the winter elements.
Caroline Metz studies extreme heat at the University of Waterloo.
We're seeing more heat waves. They're more frequent, they are lasting longer, they're happening in places that didn't have them before.
In the north, heat can be more dangerous. Many people are far from hospitals, lack air conditioning, and already face high energy costs. But these communities do have one advantage.
Social cohesion is a really important factor for resilience.
Metz says heat-related illnesses can be prevented just by people checking in on each other, something small communities like Paulatuk are already good at. With the heat this summer, many offices and gyms in the territory were turned into cooling centers, a model Rubin believes his community will soon need to adopt. Sarah Kromolowski, CBC News, Yellowknife.
There is a great deal of frustration among some federal bureaucrats these days. In a matter of weeks, they'll have to go to the office at least 3 days a week. Right now, they're only obligated to go for 2. But as Danielle LeBlanc reports, the government is hoping to convince them of the benefits of being in the office more often.
Public service is team sport. It's about working together.
Christiane Fox is deputy clerk at the Privy Council office. She hopes bureaucrats will learn to appreciate spending an extra day at the office every week, starting on September 9th.
Bringing people together strengthens teamwork in a way that is harder to do remotely.
Federal bureaucrats like Laurence Dufault feel the move won't make them more effective, while forcing them to spend more on transportation and lunches.
Ça change pas grand-chose, mais c'est plus le fait que ça va nous coûter plus cher.
The government knows there is a high level of discontent among federal bureaucrats. At the same time, Fox feels Canadians expect federal employees to spend more time at the office than at home.
Of course, we can't ignore the perceptions and the comments that are made about the public service.
None of these arguments sway the Public Service Alliance of Canada, which wants to entrench the right of federal employees to work from home. National Vice President Alex Sillis.
We've seen lobbying of MPs. We're continuing with that. We've filed unfair labor practice complaints. We've filed grievances. So that's going to continue.
PSAC says if the government doesn't budge, the issue of remote work will be at the center of collective bargaining negotiations next year. Daniel Leblanc, CBC News, Ottawa.
And this is the most read story at cbcnews.ca. It is on our main page. That is the latest national and international news. From World Report, I'm Marcia Young.
You can see me scooting on YouTube back into my chair this morning. I was just moving the blind to see what it's like out there. Pretty good. Nice clear sky, beautiful sunrise, and it's going to be just a touch cooler, which is just fine by me after sweating it out at the Burt Block party last night. Everyone was talking about the humidity and the heat, so we'll tell you about the forecast in a moment. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, as I've been saying this morning on the show, don't throw anything at the radio. I'm just the messenger, but some students are back in class today. It's happening. Not the younger set, but students at Red River College Polytech will head back to class. It's the start of the fall term today, at least officially. So we're going to talk to the college's VP of Academics about what students can expect this year, enrollment numbers, some new courses. So that's interviews coming up on CBC. In addition, this hour on the program, speaking of school, high school basketball alum from all over Winnipeg balled their way to a top spot in the basketball court. Imagine coming back years later and playing your high school rivals. So who won? What was this tournament like? We've got a bit of a fun story coming up. It happened over the weekend, and CBC was at this tournament. So stay tuned. That's coming up at 7:40. Right now, though, with more serious news, Matt Humphrey is in with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Strong winds yesterday ripped up parts of the arena in Fox Warren. The town is near the Saskatchewan border on Highway 16. People there are telling us many residents have memories wrapped up in the arena, and seeing it badly damaged is devastating for the community. We'll hear more at the bottom of the hour. And Fertilizer Canada says its members have lost tens of millions of dollars due to the recent standstill at Canada's two largest railways. The work stoppage has now ended after the Federal Labour Board ordered railways to resume operations and ordered employees back to work ahead of binding arbitration. But Fertilizer Canada says their ensuing financial damage could be passed on to consumers, and the rail stoppage damaged Canada's reputation as a trading partner. We'll hear more at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
17 degrees in Winnipeg. Sky is clear, and as I mentioned, a high of 23 degrees today. Cooler is what I was mentioning. We will have lots of sunshine in our forecast, but a bit of a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon. And coming in with an update on our commute that has been quiet so far, Dylan Longhurst is in. Hi.
Yeah, and it remains quiet. So instead, I'm coming in with a, well, not so fun fact that this time next week, if we're talking schools open, you might need to be thinking about school zones because it's going to be September 2nd next Monday.
It's the big ticket change is what I call it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Slow
catches me off guard every year. So this is a good point to make it a little note in your brain right now. That's coming up. So enjoy being able to go summer speeds at those school zones right now, but that's about to change. So keep it in mind. If you see anything out there on your commute that's slowing you down today, though, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
Wow, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, you might want to do so just for the sky pictures. I'm just going to be honest here. During the morning show, watching the sun come up over the downtown, there it is again. If you're on YouTube, you can see it over the buildings in downtown Winnipeg. It's just beautiful, just gorgeous. And we've got that kind of clear morning as I mentioned today, which is really nice for a first day back. As I mentioned, don't be alarmed. School does start today for some students and educators in Manitoba. At least it's day one officially over at Red River College Polytech. They're welcoming students and instructors back to class. It's the start of the fall term. With that in mind, what does the college have in store as the new year begins? Well, Christine Watson's college's Vice President of Academics, and in representing with your shirt today, I like it.
Absolutely. And happy to talk to an RRC Polytech grad.
Yes, I did. I went to U of M and I went to Red River, and I had a great experience in school at Red River. How does it feel to welcome students and staff back and start of a new school year?
It's so exciting. Last week, we had something we call Red River Ready. And so we welcome students back to do tours and meet their instructors and just really welcome them back into the RRC Polytech family. And that sense of excitement, we this is kind of like our new year. So the sense of excitement is real, as is the sense of nervousness. And we often talk to students about what they need to do to succeed as they're entering into post-secondary education.
Are there most common questions that you get? Because as you said, if it's post-secondary for the first time for you, it can be really nerve-wracking.
Yes. Especially if you don't have a history of post-secondary in your family. I would say that lots of the questions are around where to go to find things.
Yep.
And really reminding students about their mental health, making sure they're building networks early. We know for mental health purposes that building community fast in education leads to higher retention rates. They're really excited about clubs and about what the Student Association can offer. And for some students, it's about safe places to go. So our Spectrum, which is for 2S LGBTQIA students and allies, really thinking about where students can congregate, where they can meet other people, and where they can get academic support and success through tutoring and counseling, and just enjoying that kind of campus feel.
You forget about those jitters sometimes, the older I get. Like, I remember being on Notre Dame at Red River, and it was like, where's the South Gym? What? I still don't think I could get myself there. What does your enrollment look like this year? What are your numbers looking like?
So our enrollment overall is really healthy. It's up overall, especially interestingly enough in our regional campuses. So of course, Red River College Polytech not only has campuses in Winnipeg, we have campuses in Steinbach and Winkler, Portage, Selkirk, Interlake, Peguis Fisher River. And so our regional campus numbers are really healthy this year, which means that students are trying to access post-secondary education in their own communities. We also have really strong enrollment in healthcare programming, which is not a surprise. That's a really in-demand sector. And so our nursing programs, vet tech, and health information management are really strong.
Have there been any surprises with enrollment? Like, do you have higher enrollment than you've had in the past, or are you returning to about level after COVID?
It's about on track with where we've seen the trend go. We did have a surge immediately after COVID, and that was wonderful to see people coming back to education. But on track, I think Red River College Polytech is in a growth opportunity. I think that people recognize the value of a polytechnic education, and obviously, Manitoba needs people who are bringing the skills and talent that Manitoba businesses need to grow and be successful.
What does your number of international students look like at Red River?
So our international students are on par with where they were last year. We haven't seen a dip. We haven't seen, we're going to fill all of our seats for international students. And in fact, we're seeing really strong interest in RRC Polytech. We have over 60 countries represented as part of our international student population.
What is your overall enrollment number, not just for international students, but what is the number of students that you have?
It varies across our campuses, and I would say that overall we've got a really healthy number, both domestically and internationally.
But overall, your enrollment number, Christine, how many students does Red River have?
We look at overall in terms of enrollments, probably around 22,000.
Okay. What are some of the new courses you've got on tap this year?
We're really excited to be offering our new Price Institute of Advanced Manufacturing and Mechatronics. That's a new institute. We've got a new postgraduate diploma in mechatronics and one in advanced manufacturing. And we're also offering some micro-credentials in advanced manufacturing for people who are working in the sectors that are looking at implementing robotics, automation, additive, manufacturing. Manitoba businesses are desperately looking for support in applied research, in adopting new technologies. And that's coming at us really fast, including artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to RRC Polytech to really support the transformation of their businesses through technology adoption. And we support that not only in our curriculum and preparing students to be for future employees, but also through our applied research.
I understand some of your longstanding programs that would match needs of Manitoba employers are also maybe even full this year, like around aircraft maintenance engineering and
Yes.
such. Do a lot of courses have wait lists?
I would say that many of our courses are in high demand. We try to keep our wait lists low because we want to make sure that people can access programs. So if we do see big wait lists, we really try to think about how we can add sections to make sure that students have access and that the employers have the future workforce that they need to be successful.
Are there any courses that are seeing lower enrollment numbers or courses that you've cut because the interest wasn't there?
We haven't cut any courses recently, no. I think that we really look at how we can often renew and revitalize our programs for employers. We have program advisory councils that we meet with regularly to tell us what industry needs. And so we really look at making sure that our programs are relevant and current.
I'm totally self-involved here, but I want to ask about journalism because Journalism Everywhere programs are struggling with numbers. That's across the country. We've done interviews with other universities. Some of them are even cutting their programs. Obviously, creative communication speaks to that regard. You can major in journalism, but the numbers sometimes have been low as well. So I'm not sure how that program's looking.
It's looking fantastic.
Oh, good. Please, we need young journalists.
Well, and
I
in
told
part,
you I'm self-involved here, but I'm just going to put it out there.
Because
we do.
really journalism is about storytelling.
Yeah.
And so we're really looking at, we have a really exciting new announcement we're going to be making in the fall that brings creative communications, digital media design, information technology, data science, really bringing that storytelling focus to film and media, digital media, graphic design, and really looking at interdisciplinary opportunities. Creative communications is just one entry into a multitude of possible careers.
Whenever somebody says we have an announcement coming, I know enough that you're not going to give it to me now, but I'm going to try. Anything?
I can't, but
Okay.
I can tell you it's going to be extremely exciting.
Obviously, you're eager to get to the college this morning, greet students on the first day. I hear that it's kind of a new tradition now. Is that right?
It is, yes. We have all of our senior leaders greeting students at the bus loops and in the parking lots. We wear our red shirts, as you've seen, to let them know that we're here to welcome them, that they're part of the RRC Polytech family, and we're so grateful that they chose us for their education, and we're just so excited to get them on their way.
Thank you very much for coming in this morning and being with us, and have a good time on the first day.
Thanks so much, Marcy.
Live in studio with us here at CBC, Christine Watson, Red River College's Polytechnic Vice President of Academics. Today is the first day of fall term.
How much time do I have till I don't understand what it means to be young? What it means to be young? Tell me how far can I go till I can't answer no to that glorious sun, to that glorious sun. They say one day you gotta wake up, one day you gotta make a lifestyle. Oh, but ideals are chip on my shoulder, and every year I get closer, I find it grows. Someday everything turns out fine, everything goes alright. Hey, everyone gets a life. Oh, oh, someday you're gonna know what it's like, looking back on your life, hey, counting up wasted time. Oh, oh. Tell me how long can I stand pushing back on the hand, the one that feeds me well, it feeds me well. Are you writing down the list of every moment that you missed out on? It feel like hell, it feel like hell. They say one day you gotta wake up, one day you gotta make a lifestyle. I know that everything's made up,
Love that tune. It is called Someday. Kind of works for all the students and young adults trying to shape their future. Someday you look back. I love that. Also, Roman Clark, a great local talent, was here at CBC, has given his time before to play some of our past fundraisers around the holidays when we all come together and raise money for Harvest Manitoba, for example. So nice to hear some music from him this morning. It is 7:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube, 17 and calm in Winnipeg. Nice clear sky out there. And let's go into morning sports. Paul McGowan is in this Monday morning. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with baseball. A former Blue Jay is set to make baseball history actually today, right?
Yeah, and it's so hard in baseball to be the first player to do anything. There are so many years of records and so many games in a season. But Danny Jansen will later today become the first player ever to play for both teams in one game. Now, the short version is that the Blue Jays and Red Sox had a game suspended back in June because of rain. The plan was to make that game up today. And, of course, in the meantime, Jansen was traded from the Blue Jays to the Red Sox. Will start for the Red Sox today, and so will show up in the box score for both teams. That is a first, and Jansen was asked what it's like to be part of baseball history.
Definitely cool, definitely grateful for the opportunity to be in that position. One of those, crazy things about this game, and definitely an oddity. I feel like it's getting a lot of steam of recent. Not a crazy amount, just people saying like, how cool is that? How cool is it? And it hasn't really hit me yet. I'm sure after the initial PA announcement or the first at bat, then it's just get back down to baseball. But when it's all said and done, it's going to be something cool to look back on.
So that suspended game will pick up today in the second inning before the two teams play a nightcap as well. Certainly one of the stranger doubleheaders in Blue Jays history.
It's so weird, right? I wonder if he's going to mark it like by wearing like a jersey of one team and a hat of the other, or...
I had the thought that they should do some kind of a giveaway where the jersey is half Blue Jays, half Red Sox, or just, commemorate it in some interesting way.
You think somebody would have, capitalized on the marketing for that, right?
Yeah.
Let's go to tennis. The U.S. Open starts today. What are you watching for?
Well, I talked last week about the controversy around world number one Jannik Sinner tested positive for a banned substance and was cleared of wrongdoing, but was allowed to continue competing while he was being investigated. And that stands in stark contrast to Simona Halep's experience, for example. Halep was also very highly ranked, also tested positive, but was also ultimately cleared of wrongdoing. The difference is that in Halep's case, she was suspended while the test result was investigated, missed 2 whole years in the middle of her career. And so this case of Jannik Sinner is something that players continue to talk about, including world number 2 Novak Djokovic.
I can understand the sentiments of a lot of players that are questioning whether they are treated the same. Hopefully the governing bodies of our sport will be able to learn from this case and have a better approach for the future. I think collectively there has to be a change, and I think that's obvious.
Now, Sinner's case is an example of tennis correcting past behavior and setting a new standard. That's a good thing, but it's also a thing that needs to be communicated. And the lack of transparency right now seems to be doing more harm than good. So we'll see if ATP officials do come out with any kind of a statement. In the meantime, actual tennis gets underway today, but there are no Canadians on the court until tomorrow.
Finally, Paul, a massive purchase in the world of sports memorabilia.
Which is a world that I don't really get into. But recently, a Babe Ruth jersey went up for auction. It is the jersey he wore when he called his shot in Game 3 of the 1932 World Series.
I looked down at center field and I floored it. I said, I'm going to hit the next pitch ball right past the flagpole. Well, the good Lord must have been with me.
That is a great moment in sports history, but that jersey sold for $24 million. I like to think that the people who buy these things maybe have the same kind of buyer's remorse that I have when I walk out of a Lids with like a new $50 baseball cap.
I hope not. I hope not.
Do I really need that? You know what I mean?
Your Lids hat was not $24 million. It's a fine hat, my friend, but
it's still a thing that I don't really need,
Fair enough.
I don't think anybody needs a $24 million baseball jersey.
I don't know who can afford a $24 million baseball jersey. In my world, anyway.
No,
all right,
we'll
talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is putting a lid on sports with Paul McGowan filling in for Scott Regehr still this week. We do actually have another sports story coming up, though. This one's fun right after the news this morning. High school basketball alumni from all over Winnipeg balled their way to the top spot in the basketball court. They had a chance to take those high school rivalries and go for it again. We'll find out who came out on top and what it was like at a special tournament that happened over the weekend. CBC was there. Your Monday morning commute, by the way, cooperating so far. Everything's looking pretty good out there. Call us if you need 788-3093, and we will update any issues. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 7:30, it's mainly sunny and 9 degrees in Brandon, 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good morning. I'm Matt Humphrey. This morning, trains are rolling in Manitoba once again. CN and CPKC rail workers are back on the job after a federal labor board sent their dispute to binding arbitration. The ruling ends a stoppage that industry groups say caused millions in losses for farmers. Charles Fosse runs a farm southwest of Winnipeg in the Starbuck area.
I understand there's concerns about workplace safety and other issues, but transportation is essential to this country. You know, $1 billion a day of goods move up and down the railroads.
The federal government says the ruling will help Canada avoid major economic consequences. The union representing the rail workers says it will appeal the ruling in court. Meanwhile, Fertilizer Canada says its members lost tens of millions of dollars during the work stoppage. The CEO says costs could now be passed on to the consumers, but warns the greatest fallout may be a faltering belief abroad in Canada as a dependable place to do business. Winnipeg police are asking you keep a lookout for 76-year-old George Surmay. He was last seen in North Kildonan around 8 last night. He's 5'4" with a medium build, gray hair and blue eyes. When he went missing, he was possibly wearing a gray shirt with beige shorts. And you can see Surmay's photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. The hockey rink in the town of Foxwarren was severely damaged in a storm yesterday morning. Patrick Graham lives in a farm close to the town near the Saskatchewan border. He says the storm partially ripped off one side of the roof and the whole east side of the building is torn apart. He says the arena was built in 1949 and people are heartbroken to see it damaged.
Definitely not good for the town. It's what everyone in the town loved. There's a lot of people that, I mean, when they seen it, lots of people couldn't talk. There was people in tears. It's just a horrible thing for the community.
Graham says the storm started early in the morning yesterday. The wind snapped trees and branches. And the province says the highway at Foxwarren Access Road was closed off due to that debris. The Manitoba Federation of Labour is asking the Workers' Compensation Board to ease its policies around worker burnout. Only 3 out of 21 claims have been accepted by the board since it started covering psychological injuries caused by burnout, and only 1 was granted. Federation President Kevin Rebeck wants a review of the WCB policies around worker burnout.
Well, it's pretty pathetic. I don't know about you, but I think a reasonable person would see our healthcare system these days of nurses and health aides and health workers who are overworked and stressed out, much less other traits. But to see that only 1 has been accepted shows that the system is failing.
Rebeck says the bar the board is setting to prove psychological injuries is too high. He says all injuries should be treated the same, be they physical or mental. In international news, at least 39 people have been killed after a series of brutal attacks in Pakistan's Baluchistan region. That's the sound of police examining burnt-out vehicles along a highway. They say the victims were pulled from their vehicles and shot by a group of gunmen. Similar shootings were carried out along rail lines and in police stations. The Baluchistan Liberation Army is claiming responsibility. The militant separatist group is one of many in the region demanding independence from the central government in Islamabad, the Pakistani capital. And finally, a Winnipeg paving company is warning people to be on the lookout for contractors offering deals that are just too good to be true. It comes after a local woman paid a company $3,000 for paving work, but the job wasn't done properly. Now, she says she can't get a hold of anyone at the company and has had filed a police report. The Better Business Bureau says incidents like these are rising in Manitoba. Scott Worms is a senior estimator with the Superior Asphalt Paving Company. He says legitimate companies don't go door to door looking for work.
Legitimate companies do not pressure you into immediate decisions. They need to be very cautious of doorstep pitches and offers for immediate services at discounted rates or prices.
The BBB says contractors can purposely do poor jobs or no work at all in some cases under the guise of offering a must-have deal. Winnipeg police say they're investigating reports of similar incidents. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
Matt Humphrey in our news department this morning. It's 7:35 a.m. and it's time for our regional forecast here at CBC. And just looking at the span of temperatures across this province this morning. Roblin this Monday morning, 9 degrees. You're the cold spot. And the hot spot is Churchill at 19 degrees. You can already see that that's cooler than it has been. Now, we don't have any rain systems, fog, mist. It's mostly just either cloudy or sunny across the province. Here in Winnipeg, it is calm, clear, and it will be sunny for most of the day. Maybe a few clouds this afternoon. Winds northwest 20 to 40. Your high today 23. So after that sticky, crazy, humid weekend, it looks like we're going to be a little bit calmer. So a high of 23 today. Tonight partly cloudy, low 11 in Winnipeg. Tomorrow for Winnipeg cloudy and 20, and then on Wednesday sunny and a high of 24. We don't see showers until late Wednesday potentially here in the city. In Brandon, mix of sun and cloud today. Your high 23 as well. Partly cloudy tonight, low 9. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud, a high of 20 degrees. So you're the same as Winnipeg. And then on Wednesday, the showers will move in a little bit earlier than they'll reach Winnipeg. So Brandon, it'll start for you with a system that's coming out of the west. But a high of 23 for you Wednesday and today, as mentioned. Right now, you're sitting at 10 degrees. It's mainly clear. And finally, up in Thompson, it's cloudy and it's 13 right now, but it's windy. Winds are northwest at 50. Today, your winds are going to be gusty throughout the day, up to 50. It should calm down this afternoon. Mainly cloudy for Thompson today, though, a high of 19 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds, low 3. Ooh, it's creeping close to 0. Tomorrow, mainly sunny and a high of 20 for Thompson. And then into Wednesday, you escape the showers for the day. Thompson, sunny and 23. But the showers will move in Wednesday night into Thursday for a wet part of the week ahead. But once again, in Thompson right now, it is 13 degrees and cloudy. Let's get into the morning commute with Dylan Longhurst.
You know, I like the fall, but hearing you say those like low temperatures, we're getting closer. I don't know. I'm gonna put that at the back of my brain. I'm not gonna think about it for the rest of the day because I'm gonna live in denial until I have to.
You're not the only one.
Yep. As for that commute today, it's a really easy commute out there from everything we're hearing. Not a lot of things slowing you down on this Monday morning. We actually did get a call from Jason, who's traveling on a bike at that river walk. Says that the trails are actually really nice and packed down with new gravel around the legislative building to Donald. Does kind of fall into a little bit less repair later on you go, so you always want to be careful. Also wanted to mention from Jason that the sun is super low. It's rising a little bit later in the day, and that's actually reducing visibility for them as they're driving. So just wanted to recommend caution to other fellow cyclists out there today. So great advice from Jason there, just to be extra careful as the conditions tend to change as we hit this time of year. So it's good to keep in mind. As for anything else you're seeing out there on the roads, one thing to note, the Burt Block parties might be done. The stage is still there and needing to be torn down, which they say the Smith Street is closed between Ellis and Notre Dame until about 6 tonight. So expect that to cause some delays for you on your downtown commute today as well, and then it should be good going forward. Anything else you're seeing out there, you can give us a call at 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Dylan. Speaking of the Burt Block party, after 8 o'clock, we'll have a little bit of taking you to some of those shows. Dylan and I were both at separate shows over the weekend, so we'll reflect some of the favorite moments that Winnipeggers had. There was a really special one at the Arkell show that Dylan caught, so we'll talk about that a little bit after 8 in the program. Next on the show, though, how great would it feel to make it rain with baskets over your old high school basketball rivals? Maybe you've had some unfinished business on the hardwood that's been stayed in your mind for many years. Well, for some lucky Winnipeggers, that is what they got to do. Over the weekend, the University of Winnipeg's Duckworth Centre was the second annual Run It Back basketball alumni tournament. So the event had 21 high school teams from all over Winnipeg, dating as far back as 2004, 20 years ago. CBC's Jim Agapito was there.
I'm Joseph Medrano. And I'm Calvin Diaz. So we're partners. We obviously organize the Run It Back tournament. It's our second year doing it. Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge success over these past 2 years. We just hope to continue to grow every year. So
I also know that you were playing, and I'm catching you probably on a break. What's it like, playing again high school ball against your old rivals?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of my relationships were basically built off of basketball. So it's nice to just reconnect with everyone again. We have generations from back in early 2000s, and now they're mixing with 2020s, and it's just awesome to see everyone mix up together and just get together and play the game that we all love and grew up playing. So
yeah, it was great. When you think about the basketball community in the city, bringing all the support from friends and family into the sport of basketball, it's just great to see. Who makes the teams? Like, what's the level of play at? How do you guys figure that out? We give it all to the team captains. Anyone from they're given high schools, they make up their own teams. They submit them, and we've created 3 different divisions with the Legends, where it's really, really competitive. That's where you got the college players, former pros, and then we also got the all-time division, more of a recreational level, still competitive. And then this year we introduced the ladies division, which just wanted to include them for this year's tournament. What division are you playing in right now?
I'm in the Legends division.
What's it like playing on the floor right now?
It's awesome. I mean, being as old, I'm not that old yet, but I mean,
how old are you?
I'm 28. So your legs are still moving, and it's just nice to stay as competitive as possible, right? So seeing everyone still being active and doing their part in the community here, it's just lovely to see.
What pumps you up during the game? Obviously, you have a lot of people out here. What's bringing that, that fire in you?
The bragging rights. That's really it. I mean, we won it last year, so we want to try to get back there and defend it. So, we want to be known as the tournament of the summer in Manitoba. So we want to eventually, hopefully, reach out to those schools outside of Winnipeg. That'd be awesome to get like a Selkirk or. Right, Crocus Plains, that'd be something to...
You want to make it all in the province, eh?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay, what advice do you give your friend right now who's playing?
Go to work, start cooking.
Raisel Ginto.
What team did you play for today?
Sisler ladies.
Okay, how'd you guys do?
We came in second. We played Dakota. Obviously, with us being alumni, we have to slow it down every couple of times. But no, it's been fun. It's been fun playing against different ages and everything like that, and playing just with girls that I played with in the past, girls that I wanted to play with before. So it's fun. Honestly, it makes playing the game a little bit more intense, because you know that there's that little rivalry from different years, different ages. We had a rivalry with Vincent Massey. A couple of the girls on the team had rivalries with Dakota. So playing against them with all of us mixed together, it was a good tournament. Especially with so many people that are still playing outside, after high school, brings so much nostalgia from high school, because you're coming and you're cheering on high school versus high school. So it's you're defending your territory and stuff like that. So that's pretty fun.
What was the most exciting parts of the day?
I don't know, just going on runs, having glimpses of what it was like in high school. The chemistry's still there. All of us still kind of know what we're doing with each other. So, and then just playing against other competition, other high schools, it just always brings you back. Being a little bit older and having that experience in the States, coming back and seeing that the competition here is still pretty good. And there is people that are making it out of high school. I love to see it, and I love to play against them. Happy that the Run It Back actually listened to us last year and put a ladies team in. So hopefully we get more teams out next year for the ladies division.
My name is Shannon Moranin.
What's it been like cheering from the side?
It's been great. I mean, the energy in here is awesome. We do have a lot of fans, and a lot of people are supporting their respective teams. And, it's great to see all the support, love and support from all the fans, friends, and family.
You see the families there. What's their reactions been like?
To me, it seems like it's great. They love the concept of this tournament as well. And, a bunch of these guys came together and are representing their school. So a lot, especially the parents, they're so happy to be watching their sons and, their brothers play, and even sisters play on their team. Basketball is a big thing here in Winnipeg, and for it to be this big and for it to be this successful is just so amazing to be a part of.
I love all the squeaking, right? Takes you right there. That was CBC's Jim Agapito speaking to spectator and volunteer Shannon Moranin. Before that, we also heard from Razel Guinto as well as Joseph Medrano and Calvin Diaz. Now, an interesting fact about Razel, she played Division I NCAA basketball for the Louisiana Tech Lady Texters. So she was a Canadian All-Star. She won the prestigious USA Conference Coast Sixth Player of the Year. That means she was one of the best players off the bench in the entire conference. So it just kind of speaks to the caliber and shows the caliber of talent that was playing in this tournament over the weekend. That was the CBC's Jim Agapito, as mentioned, who checked it out. If you want to check it out and see some of the results, you can go to their page at runitback.tournament.
My name is John Cullen, and I want to tell you a story. It's a story about a scandal, broken relationships, gossip, rumors, money, corporate rivalry, and curling. It's the story of Broomgate, how a single broom, yes, a broom, turned friends into foes and almost killed the 500-year-old sport of curling.
It was a year I'd like to forget.
Broomgate, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
7:45 a.m. the time right now. We had an interview this hour already about how Red River College Polytech is back in class today. Now, most of the younger kids will go back next week with the first day. And still ahead, we're going to talk about those back-to-school costs after 8 o'clock. Personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Huq says, maybe you shouldn't buy everything on the list. Maybe you should just wait. And she's going to talk about why. So that's one of the strategies. So that's coming up after 8 in the show. Nice clear sky out there, 17 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, put up your hand if you had to use an outhouse this summer. Look at our control room, everybody. Myself as well, out in Newfoundland, ziplining, no bathroom in sight. We've all been there. There's an urgent call of nature. You might be on a road trip. You're going to the rest stop, trying to find an outhouse. Now, while you're there, though, you might come across a gift from Calgary's Kathy Rigby, the gift of art in an outhouse. Rigby is art bombing outhouses in Canada as she travels across the country. She's sprucing up spots to evoke a little bit of joy in what is otherwise, well, let's face it, generally a drab and stinky place. Here's Kathy to explain what she's been doing.
I am an artist, and I started painting in watercolor recently. Normally I paint in oils, and I was wondering what I could do to, make people smile and make people happy in a time that, sometimes it's a struggle. And so what better place than a stinky old outhouse to hang a little piece of art? So we started off in Calgary, of course, and we were... I've done it in Saskatchewan, and then just every time I find an outhouse that's a little bit off the beaten path. So in La Maurice National Park, there was an outhouse that they use for cross-country skiing, and I hung a bulrush painting, I think, in there. And so it's not necessarily where it's just just wherever we stop that there's an outhouse. For example, we were at Five Islands, which overlooks the Bay of Fundy, a couple of weeks ago, and I hung a painting there of a penguin. Just a really that kind of funny-looking penguin, and just to make people smile. I don't know. I received a message from where was it? It was in Nova Scotia, some campground. And I left a painting of a blue heron in an outhouse. And the maintenance fella, was a bit older than I am, and he isn't on social media. So I got a message from his daughter saying, hey, my dad really liked your painting, and it made him smile, and he just left it there because it's going to make other people smile. So it's all about, making some happiness.
Now, here's a tip for you. I was trying to Google to see some of the images, and I Googled outhouse art, and what do you think came up? a whole bunch of people who paint outhouses. Who knew that was even a thing? But Kathy's art is what's left in the outhouses. And if you want to find her work, she's an amateur artist out of Calgary. She's also, by the way, a retired nurse. Her name is Kathy Rigby. And her outdoor outhouse art is that she's been leaving for people is at Kathy with a C, Kathy Art 4, the number 4. So kathyart4u.com. It is 12 minutes now to 8 o'clock on CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for joining us. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning. And it is, as mentioned, mainly clear in southern Manitoba. Brandon's sitting at 10 degrees. Thompson does have some cloud cover up north. It is 13 there. And in Winnipeg, we've been at 17 since we got on the air this morning before 5, or before 6, I should say. So it's been a pretty steady temperature through this morning and a nice reprieve from that really sticky hot heat we had yesterday. In the city of Winnipeg and actually throughout most of the weekend. Well, next on the show, a local nonprofit is giving kids involved with Manitoba's foster care system a helping hand. This month, Futures Forward gave away nearly 60 fully packed backpacks. The bags had everything from stocked pencil cases to water bottles and free haircut vouchers as well. Evan Forrest is with Futures Forward. He says, while going back to school can be challenging for a lot of people, for youth who are newly out of care, just out of care, the education system can be fraught with barriers. And he's here a bit to talk about that. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So when you think about someone that's just out of care, a young person that's been in care, and they're facing barriers at back to school, what are the biggest barriers you think about?
Yeah, I mean, if we're thinking about post-secondary, the biggest one would be financial. A lot of people coming out of the foster care system don't really have like the financial kind of support system from, family networks and things like that. But there's also a big kind of social, support system aspect to that as well. We talk a lot about kind of boomeranging. So when people aren't in care, when they do live with their families, they can kind of, come back to their families when things aren't going well. So for folks that have been in care, and they don't necessarily have those systems every time to fall back on, it can be a lot more challenging to, return to, or I guess you don't really have anything to jump back to. It's really kind of going all in, and that requires a lot of support from nonprofits or other support systems like ours.
It's such a transitional time of life anyway for people, you know what I mean? Anybody's going to be looking for extra support. If you had to change one thing to sort of bridge that gap, what do you think should be in the system to help young people?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a complex issue. It's really hard to kind of put like a one solution on it, but we talk a lot about transitional supports. A lot of advocates in this doing this kind of work talk a lot about readiness-based models. So instead of right now where we have an age cutoff for a lot of the time people are receiving support from CFS, a more like readiness-based model. So when people are exiting care, there's like kind of an assessment, long-term support. It's a more transitional rather than just a cutoff. But yeah, I think there's across the board a lot of things that could be done differently.
How do the challenges potentially impact kids as the school year unfolds?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it's such a transitional time. And, for anyone starting school, and we have people going into adult ed, high school, university, college, it's all coming with their own kind of unique challenges and barriers. We talk a lot about, a big part of our job is like getting people into school, but we also have to make sure that, we're there for support as they're, experiencing challenges. Like if they have to, their first time having to VW a class or, dealing with a poor grade or like often like that learning curve that you get from post-secondary, but also just other issues that come up. We work with a group of people that often, housing is an issue, mental health challenges, financial barriers, like I mentioned. So it can be very complicated and sometimes diverse needs, but we really try and do the best work that we can.
I mentioned the backpack kits that you were able to hand out. There were 57 of them fully packed. What was the response like? Do you see the recipients or are they
so they all pick them up in person at our office, and, everyone's had a very nice, lots of thanks for us and everything. We kind of, quote unquote, sold out in less than 2 hours, which is the fastest I've seen them go out in kind of my 3 years with the program. And people thank us not only for like the physical, school supplies that we're giving them, But I think what we see a lot with programs like these is the recognition for, for people who are often underrepresented or underserved, like just seeing something that's like, oh, this is for me and for people like me. And I think that can be very positive, and that's something that we heard a lot of as well, of just thank you for doing this for, youth from care, which is really nice as well.
Evan, what people may not, be able to wrap their head around all of the differences that you're alluding to here. How might someone's experience differ from a youth that's, never been in care?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm talking a lot about boomeranging. So if you're someone that was removed from your biological family and living in care, or whatever your kind of experience with the CFS system was, you don't have the ability necessarily always to fall back on family or fall back on a support system. A lot of these folks are often, they don't have a lot of work experience. A lot of our folks, these are older statistics, but only a third of youth from care have finished high school. So that's why it's so important to kind of encourage these initiatives that support, employment and education for this population.
What do you think is needed most right now for kids who are either currently in care or have been in care?
That's such a tough question. It's such a diverse issues across the board. So just supporting more programs that, offer those transitional supports, I would say, is the biggest thing.
Thank you for coming in. Appreciate your time on this busy Monday morning, Evan. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Evan Forrest is Outreach Coordinator for the Futures Forward program at Youth Employment Services, Manitoba.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
It's time for your Monday morning CBC Manitoba headlines at 4 minutes to 8 o'clock. Matt Humphreys popped back in. Good morning again.
Good morning. Winnipeg police are dealing with a silver alert this morning. They're asking you keep a lookout for 76-year-old George Surmay. He was last seen in the North Kildonan area around 8 last night. He's 5'4" with a medium build, gray hair, blue eyes, and he went missing, possibly wearing a gray shirt and beige shorts. You can see his photo on our website right now, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back with more after World Report.
As I continue to tell people, it's going to be nicer today, but not warmer today, because it's been so sticky and so hot that I think nicer probably equates to maybe a bit of a break, unless you're going to the beach. Because a high of 23, maybe not laying around on the beach weather. A high of 23 is what we've got in Winnipeg, though. It's also what we're going to get in Brandon, and it is close to what you're getting in Thompson, but Thompson just going to 19. In Winnipeg, we will start with sunshine. You can see that out there already. Nice light blue sky in downtown Winnipeg. We will have a few clouds move in this afternoon, and it'll be a little breezy. Winds will be northwest 20 to 40 with that high of 23. It's 17 in Winnipeg still. And Dylan Longhurst is in to update commute news. Good morning again.
Yes, I got a correction to something I said earlier. Carrie called and let us know that Smith is actually open following the block party. They are projected, of course, to stay closed for about 6 o'clock, or at least that's the timetable they gave. And yeah, apparently you can drive right on through. So thank you, Carrie, for that update. Really shows the personal experience matters a lot more than the internet when it comes to reporting on these commuter things. So thank you so much for your calls. If you see anything else out there, of course, you can always give me a call till the end of the show at 204-788-3093.
All right, Dylan, thanks. 788 3093. Once again, just to reiterate that number. Also, anything you hear in the program that you have feedback on, or if you want to reach out to us with a question or you have a story idea, just a reminder, you can use our listener line or our general email for the show. So the listener line, there it is up on screen if you're on YouTube, 204-788-3205, or the email for the show is radio893@cbc.ca. Well, back to school next week. The question is, do you need to buy everything on the back-to-school supply list in advance of day one? Well, actually, our personal finance columnist, Rubina Ahmed Haq at CBC, says not only do you not have to, maybe you shouldn't if you're trying to make sure that you're economically making the best decisions in these difficult times for so many families. So expensive, everything. We're going to talk to Rubina about all of this coming up after 8 on the show. Right now, though, it's time for World Report. It's 1 minute to 8 in national and international news on CBC. It's next. Stay with us.
Tomorrow on Q. Tom Selleck's story is one that could only be told in Hollywood. Contestant on The Dating Game gets discovered. Next thing you know, he's starring in one of the biggest TV shows of all time.
I get unlimited use of the Ferrari.
Tom will be here to tell you about Magnum PI and what he remembers about working with Matthew Perry on Friends.
Chandler, I'm not scared of you.
Q with Tom Power. Tomorrow morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. The Liberal Cabinet is getting together to talk about the rail stoppage, the cost of living, and their own political future. Our National Affairs panel brings us up to date on this summer's hot politics. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada is going to match American tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says additional surcharges will also be placed on Chinese steel and aluminum imports. Trudeau made the announcement this morning at the annual cabinet retreat, which is being held in Halifax this year. The CBC's Kate McKenna is there. And Kate, what can you tell us?
Justin Trudeau is framing this decision as supporting Canada's auto and manufacturing sector. He said the government of Canada intends to implement a 100% tariff on all Chinese-made EVs effective October 1st, and that the federal government will apply a 25% tariff on imports of steel and aluminum products from China effective October 15th. With this announcement, Canada is effectively matching the U.S. tariffs, which were announced in May. Yesterday, Joe Biden's security advisor Jake Sullivan spoke to Cabinet. He told reporters that whether Canada implements tariffs isn't for the U.S. to decide, but that there are two distinct challenges regarding Chinese EVs. One is that the Chinese electric vehicle industry is heavily subsidized, and that has eliminated a level playing field, so it's partially an economic response. Second, there are issues associated with data security, critical infrastructure, and national security when it comes to Chinese EVs. This is the first major announcement to come from this year's cabinet retreat. It's also the first full day that cabinet members are meeting. Trudeau will be looking to change the channel on the political discourse, which in recent months has been focused on his party's double-digit lag in the polls and questions about whether Trudeau ought to make major changes to his party's strategy or senior staff following a major by-election loss in June. He has repeatedly told reporters that he plans to stay on as leader and see the Liberal Party through the next election.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Kate McKenna in Halifax, in Pakistan. People walk around burnt-out vehicles on a highway in the Baluchistan region. At least 39 people are dead. Overnight, several gunmen attacked people on highways, railways, and in police stations. Officials say people were pulled from vehicles and buses, then executed. A rail line and police stations were also bombed. The militant group, the Baluchistan Liberation Army, has claimed responsibility. The separatist group is one of many demanding independence from the central government in Islamabad. Ukrainian officials say Russia targeted 15 regions this morning in an aerial attack on that country. Air raid sirens sounding in Kyiv. Hundreds of people are sheltering underground in metro stations. Local authorities say they shot down 15 missiles and 15 drones targeting the capital. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia launched more than 100 missiles and about 100 drones across the country. Zelensky says energy infrastructure was particularly damaged. Iran's foreign minister is vowing to retaliate against Israel over the assassination of Hamas's leader. Israel has not confirmed nor denied its part in the bombing death of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last month, but Iran says its reaction will be measured and well calculated. This latest threat is raising fears of a wider regional war. Israel and Hezbollah traded intense airstrikes over the weekend. It was one of the largest exchanges of fire since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik has the latest from Jerusalem.
With the airstrikes and rocket launches that shook northern Israel and southern Lebanon calmed for now, the question is, will major attacks by Hezbollah return? The militant group called Sunday Phase 1, leaving its options open. In a televised speech, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said if the attack did not achieve sufficient results, Hezbollah reserved the right to strike again. The group fired more than 300 rockets and drones at Israel, though Israeli defense officials say thousands more would have been launched if it had not destroyed them in a preemptive strike, based on advance intelligence, some from Washington. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
I can't speak directly to the conversations that unfolded yesterday, other than to say there was continuous communication, and we have been tracking the threat of Hezbollah attacks against Israel for some time now.
But the fear of escalation in Israel's north won't subside until there's a ceasefire in the south. And at the moment, that prospect in Gaza seems just as shaky. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The captain of the super yacht that sank off the coast of Sicily last week is now under investigation. British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter, and his associates were among the 7 people killed. The yacht went down during a storm a week ago. Italian prosecutors today confirm they are looking into Captain James Cutfield. He's being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. 15 people survived, including Lynch's wife, although a weather event had occurred at the time the ship sank. Officials say crew negligence may have played a part in the deaths of those on board. Canada's north is feeling climate change more than just about anywhere else in the country. In the Northwest Territories, communities have experienced flooding, wildfires, and low water levels in recent years. And now they're facing a new problem, extreme heat. Sarah Kromolowski reports.
We couldn't stay outdoors. Something I've never seen in terms of heat.
Ray Rubin is the mayor of Powlatuck in the Northwest Territories, a hamlet on the northern Arctic coast that weeks ago recorded its highest ever temperature, 31 degrees Celsius. The mayor says it's worrying in a community where air conditioning is still very rare.
There's not too many ways that we can stay cool. We're geared to stay warm, against the cold and the winter elements.
Caroline Met studies extreme heat at the University of Waterloo.
We're seeing more heat waves. They're more frequent. They are lasting longer. They're happening in places that didn't have them before.
In the north, heat can be more dangerous. Many people are far from hospitals, lack air conditioning, and already face high energy costs. But these communities do have one advantage.
Social cohesion is a really important factor for resilience.
Metz says heat-related illnesses can be prevented just by people checking in on each other, something small communities like Powlatuck are already good at. With the heat this summer, many offices and gyms in the territory were turned into cooling centers, a model Rubin believes his community will soon need to adopt. Sarah Kromolowski, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Alaska's governor has declared a disaster. A landslide forced an evacuation in the southeastern coastal city of Ketchikan. It is a popular spot for tourists and is often a stop for cruise ships. Governor Mike Dunleavy says the landslide yesterday afternoon killed 1 person, several homes, and some infrastructure were damaged. Officials in Alaska say they are receiving support from all levels of government. Australians now have the right to ignore their bosses outside working hours. The right to disconnect law takes effect today. Workers are now protected if they don't want to monitor, read, or respond to contact from their employers outside work hours. More than 20 countries, mostly in Europe and Latin America, have adopted the right to disconnect. Freelance reporter Phil Mercer has reaction from Sydney.
I suppose it's a form of anxiety. You feel the phone ring, and I don't think it's one of my friends or family. I think it's work. There is some expectation that I do pick up.
Australians are reacting to new rules saying they can now break free from the stress of after-hours calls and emails from work.
You should be able to come to an agreement with your boss whereby it can be amicable, but I do think generally today there is far more of an expectation for people to be contacted out of hours.
The new guidelines brought in by Australia's centre-left Labor Party will be enforced by the country's Fair Work Commission. Companies found in contravention will face hefty fines. However, there's still a grey area in some cases where bosses need to consider workers ignoring contact as reasonable. Brent Ferguson is from the Australian Industry Group.
What's reasonable or unreasonable is going to depend on the individual circumstances, and that uncertainty is part of the difficulty that industry is really grappling with at the moment.
Australian workers now have a right to disconnect, which is really awesome.
Sally McManus is the Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions.
Not all employers, but some employers have completely blurred or just crossed over those boundaries and are expecting people to be connected and answer their emails and look at their phones 24/7, and that's just not on.
The COVID pandemic and remote work setups blurred the lines between employment and private lives. Observers say Australia's right to disconnect law is an attempt to rebalance the working day. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good, bright Monday morning. Lots of sunshine downtown in Winnipeg. I'm Mercy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube this morning. Thanks for joining us. You're with Information Radio. Now, you probably have a calendar somewhere in your home, and maybe you've got the first day of school circled. If you go to Red River, it's today. Next week, of course, for the majority of school divisions with the younger kids. However, what about what might also be beside your fridge under a magnet? Do you have a school supply list up there? This half hour on the show, we're going to hear why personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Huq says you may not want to buy everything on the list. And we're going to hear about why and what her plans are for saving money around this very expensive time of year. Plus, a really touching moment at the Burt Block party over the weekend with the hundreds and, I should say thousands of fans that showed up over the 4-day party in downtown Winnipeg for the different bands. We'll take you to one of the moments at the Arkell show. So stay tuned for that. Right now, though, 8:11, and Matt Humphrey is in with headlines.
Good morning. A southwestern Manitoba community of fewer than 100 people is in shock after storms damaged their local arena. It happened yesterday. It damaged the arena in Fox Warren, just south of the town of Russell and not far from the Saskatchewan border. We'll hear more about that. And a Winnipeg senior says she's out thousands of dollars after paying for what seemed like a good deal on a driveway makeover. But when the contractor was done, the work was shoddy and the driveway looked worse than it did before. You can see a photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Now she can't get a hold of the contractor and has filed a police report. The Better Business Bureau says incidents like these are on the rise in our province. More at the bottom of the hour.
Do I look slimmer to you this morning?
Yeah, of course.
Because I sweated.
Oh, the heat, yes.
Yeah, of course. I love that. I should ask you every day. I'm all pumped up now. Yeah.
Humid, sticky, muggy.
I can tell you truly, I always sweat. I'm just that person. But my hair last night at this Burt Block was like just dripping. It was so very hot.
Yeah, I'm sure it looked great.
Sass Jordan's line of the night was, "You are no longer Winnipeg." Yeah, as we were all sweating it out.
Nice.
This is my setup to say I think that you'll probably welcome a little bit of a cooler day, Winnipeg.
After that.
Yeah, it really has been sticky and humid. So a high of 23 is what we're expecting today. So that's what we will get. We are starting with some beautiful sunshine downtown. A mix of sun and cloud. Thank you, Matt, by the way. Humphrey. Matt's back at the bottom of the hour. So sunny to start start. Mix of sun and cloud this afternoon, high 23. Winds will be northwest 20 to 40 for us today. Right now it's 17 degrees in the city of Winnipeg. Tonight, low 11. Tomorrow, cloudy 20. And then we are expecting that at some point Wednesday, probably at night, we're going to get some showers. But that's further down the line. Let's stay with today. In Brandon today, right now, mainly sunny 11. And in Thompson, cloudy and 13, but windy. The morning commute. Dylan Longhurst is back with any tips on that.
Yes, northbound Route 90. We've heard about a collision at the Portage overpass, so expect delays. That collision is in the curb lane, so you want to keep left to pass. So, yeah, delays on Route 90. Otherwise, it's been a very quiet morning. Not a lot of calls going off right now, but if you see something, there's still a little bit more time on our morning show today. So whether you're walking, biking, busing, or driving, however you're getting around, you can give us a call at 204-788-3093.
Well, if you were with us in the last hour, you heard an interview all about how Red River College Polytech is back for the fall session. Today, you're going to see the red T-shirts on the various campuses around Manitoba, in fact, and the two here in Winnipeg. Though most of the little students don't go back until next week. But it does beg the question, have you bought all of the school supplies yet? Well, as I alluded to, maybe you don't need to get it all before the bell rings. We spoke with CBC personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Haq about how families can stretch their budgets and rein in back-to-school costs.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So how much emphasis do parents typically need to put on back-to-school spending for their kids?
You know, and from my perspective, parents put way too much emphasis on back-to-school spending, and myself included. I've been caught up in the hype of my kids need to have everything before the first day of class. So, of course, parents need to focus on getting their kids ready for class, having the things that they need for the first few days at the very least. I really recommend, especially if your budget's tight, you're worried about your credit card bill, worried about cash flow, that you do what I like to call the half shop or the part shop, where you really just buy the things that your children will need for the first few days of class, maybe even the first week. But then when they get back into the classroom, then make the bigger decisions about school supplies and maybe the must-have items, because they're often affected by what they see around them. And, you know, the things that you bought last week, when they get to school, they're not going to like it anymore because none of their friends are wearing that brand anymore. So you don't want to be in that situation as well. And that's why I really recommend just spreading the shopping out for back to school from, August right up until the beginning of October. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
How do you suggest parents approach budgeting for back to school to keep the costs down where possible? Like, how do you attempt to be realistic with that?
So if there ever was a time to say, I'm not keeping up with the Jones, this is it. Because it is really easy, because it's all about our children, which is probably, marketers know that as well, that, this is the people that we want to make happy the most, right, in our lives. Unlike Christmas, where sometimes we can be a little bit more pragmatic, like, Uncle John is only going to get a $15 gift this year because I haven't seen him and he hasn't called me. And it's really easy to be a bit more sort of strict about the budget when it's the holidays. But you really need to know what you can afford. Don't be affected by the things that are around you. I mean, if one thing I recommend is don't go to the mall too often, because the more you go to the mall, the more you're likely to pick up extra items. So be really focused and targeted when you are shopping. And focus on things that your children actually are going to use in the first little while. I made the mistake of buying winter gear for my kids in August, because over a dinner party, my friend said, sometimes there's really, really low selection by the time November rolls around. That's not the case. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, and that you can, still shop for your children later on in the year. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. And also realize that back to school is the second biggest time for retailers after Christmas. And so they're out there, with the signs, the must-haves, get them back to school in style and all that kind of marketing. And just be aware that we are heading into the most expensive time of year, and this is the second most after the holidays.
Do you talk to the kids about budgeting and money?
Absolutely. It's all about them. Why not involve them from the start? Even at kindergarten, I was taking my children with me. It takes longer, sometimes can be a lot more frustrating, but they get the things they want. I think it makes them feel a lot more in control of, what they're wearing and what they're using. Oftentimes, my child will choose something that I wouldn't have chose for them, but they wear it every day because they love it so much. And so that makes me feel, that average cost of use, which I'm really, obsessed with, is how much does it cost per use rather than how much does it cost at source. If they can wear that and it's average dollar a use, I'm pretty happy with that item. So take them with you, teach them things like delayed gratification, budgeting, value-based spending, all of that, these lessons that now when you start instilling in them are going to stay with them all throughout their childhood, their adolescence, and into adulthood.
What about the seller marketplaces or the thrift stores, other places where you can look for gently used things for back to school?
So when you are starting your list of things that you think you believe your child needs, the first place you should tap is the hand-me-down market, I like to call it, or the free market. I know that I have always had a network of people around me that give me hand-me-downs for my children. We make it into a bit of an event where we sit down and we go through the bag of stuff, and what they don't want, we donate on to another family. That's obviously free. There's a lot of free groups that you can join on Facebook that are local and easy to access. And thrift stores are often 90 to 95% cheaper than what you would buy brand new. So that has to be your go-to if you really want to save big money. And also make sure that you are doing the inventory at home. You're not rebuying things that already exist in your house. There's a real big push now towards what's called underconsumption. And part of that is consuming things that you already have or are easily accessible, maybe, through your own network.
When you differentiate between needs versus wants, which is, of course, what we all should be doing with any of our spending, what does that look like for back to school?
So, sometimes I think it's okay for children to have some of those wants because it makes them feel sort of proud to be back in the classroom, proud to have that item. I think there is an element of that. And if you can afford to buy a couple of things for them that is definitely just a want, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Parents should not feel like back to school has to all be about just only what you need, only the pencils and erasers and a pair of running shoes. I think if you can afford to do so, I think that does just create a little bit of excitement as well for back to school. But you really do want your list to tilt towards the needs, the things that they actually need, the backpack, the water bottle, the supplies. Teachers often send you suggestions of things that they think will help your kids in the classroom. Focus on that as well. And take your time. Don't buy it all at once. And if you do, keep your receipts. Don't wash it. The mistake I made 1 year or two where I washed everything and hung it up and realized, they're not even wearing it. I should have returned this. So don't make those kind of mistakes as well so that if you need to exchange your return, you still can do so.
Any final thoughts for keeping your budget on track and those costs in check?
So if you are going to be spending money, and so a big chunk of your budget may go towards tech, I highly recommend that if you can, that's where you focus your spending on. I've made the mistake as well where I bought cheaper tech and I've had to repurchase it the next year or replace it the next year. By purchasing better quality tech, it's going to last them longer, and they won't be asking you next year again for that same laptop. It might last them many, many years longer. And again, going back to that piece of cost per use rather than how much is it costing at source. If you are going to spend, I think that's the place, especially for older students off to high school or university. I think that would serve them better.
All right, Rabina, thank you.
Thank you.
That's CBC's personal finance columnist, Rabina Ahmed Haq. Of course, most schools across Winnipeg will return to class. Most students will return to class next week. However, Red River started today. I will mention here our noon call-in today. So between 12:30 and 1 o'clock right here on CBC's 89.3 FM, you might tune into the call-in conversation. And today it is about not the transition to back to school in terms of class, but in terms of sleep and how do you get back to that regular sleep routine in the fall. So if you have advice or a question about that, you can leave it now on the call-in line, listener line. So in case you can't make the live call-in between 12:30 and 1, you can call now, 788-3797.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world, staying on top of stories around the globe, and connected close to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
8:22 a.m. the time right now, 17 in Winnipeg. We've been there all morning long. Lots of sunshine downtown. Now, I will say this, and I'm talking to myself at the same time, so I'm not meaning to be patronizing, but if we want a vibrant downtown Winnipeg, you got to go downtown. So it was really, really nice to be downtown with thousands of people last night. Over the last 4 days, maybe you were there too. I'm talking about the Burt Block Party. So for the last 4 days, we've had a festival Thursday through Sunday, and the numbers are about 4,000 fans a night. That's capacity. And I can tell you last night, I'm pretty sure was a capacity. It shuts down the block outside the Burton Cummings Theatre, this festival. It's only, a couple of years old, handful of years, but it's seeming to find success. So this is Ellison Smith shut down with a big stage. They're still tearing that down today. They'll be finishing the cleanup. But the headliners over the last number of days, last night it was Tom Cochrane, Blue Rodeo, and the Headstones also headlined in previous nights. Lots of local talent being represented, like Indian City and Neighbor Andy last night. And I know for last night, it was just really lovely to be there with everybody, despite the hot weather, kind of just still sweating it out, enjoying some good local music, and I loved it. Now, I haven't yet mentioned the Arkells, who also headlined, but Dylan has been waiting patiently to talk about that because you were at the Arkell show,
Yes.
and you saw, I guess, the crowd experience together a really lovely moment.
Yeah, the Arkells, I've never seen them live before. They're great at engaging the audience. And my favorite moment came way later into the night, where it turns out they have a request line where you can call in, you can request a song for the show you're going to. And they played 3 voicemails back to back, all from recently engaged couples planning their weddings. And they wanted the same song for their first dance and would love to hear it live. It's this song by the Arkells and Then Some.
Okay.
And not only did they perform it for them, they took time to find each person, each couple in the crowd, gather them up to the front and form a little circle with the singer in the crowd as well, so that they could perform their first dance live with the band.
Oh, what an experience that would have been.
Yeah, it was adorable. I was too far back to get the full experience, but everyone was loving it.
I love that. So they almost got, like, if you're at a wedding and you see the circle around the dancing, they almost did that with concert goers.
Yep, live in front of 4,000 people.
Oh, I love that.
It was a cute moment, and, why don't we take a listen to that tune here? This is the Arkells.
Since you came back, I see things differently, and this love came so easily. We were talking in the dark, but it's so clear to me. I adore you. Cause you don't care where I came from. Just kiss me in the dark while my lips are numb. And I love every inch of you, and then some, and then some, and then some. Face to face, tell me what you see. I'm the town crier and you're reluctant royalty. And I understand just where you get second thoughts. I'm New Year's Eve and you're waiting for the ball to drop. And when I'm gone, do you think about me when you dream? Do I make the screen in this love? Came so easily, can you see it shining there up on the marquee? I adore you, cause you don't care where I came from. Just kiss me in the dark while my lips are numb. And I love every inch of you, and then some, 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 and then some. And when I'm gone, do you think about me when I'm gone? Do you think about me when you dream? Do I make the scream? We were talking in the dark. I adore you, cause you don't care where I came from. Just kiss me in the dark while my lips are numb. And I love every inch of you, and then some, and then some, and then I adore you, cause you don't care where I came from. Just kiss me in the dark while my lips are numb. And I love every inch of you, and then some, and then some.
Yarkels and then some. Beautiful story at a Friday night show here in Winnipeg at the Burt Block Party. 3 couples requesting that song, and then the Yarkels pulling them out of the crowd, circling around them, playing it live, and having them have, recreating dances from their weddings. I love that. If you were there, or if you're one of these couples by chance, and maybe you're listening this morning, I always lean on you listeners, but you usually come up with it. We want to hear the story. I want to know. I want to hear from those couples. What was it like to be in that circle on Friday night? What a moment. So you can call our listener line. That's the way to get us that information. It's 788-3205. 788-3205 as we do a little bit of digging to find out more about that. The Burt Block Party is wrapping up last night after 4 days of different bands being on stage. Another moment last night at the show, I know Tom Cochrane was up performing and still in pretty good voice. Like, wow, Tom Cochrane, how many years has he been on stage pumping out the hits? But he was talking about his tune Big League, and I hadn't realized that he actually permanently altered the lyrics. He was telling a story about a wristband he was wearing that was given to him by a mother of the goalie in the Humboldt Broncos who lost his life in that horrific crash on the highway. And he said he met that mother and told her, you know what, I'm going to change one of the verses for your son in honor of your son and the other players, and I won't change it back, he said. So he never sings that song now the original way. If you remember that tune, Big League, from back in the day, he sings it with that altered lyric. So you can look that up and read more about it if you'd like to. But he was nodding to that last night on the stage in Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio on CBC. Thanks so much for being with us on the Monday morning show here. Another reminder about that noon call-in between 12:30 and 1 this afternoon, the call-in conversation about readjusting to sleep after the summertime, and your best tips and tricks for the young set. Or maybe also if you have someone that is transitioning of the very littlest ones, the youngest set, and they've never had to get up and go to school. So lots of things to pay attention to as our households change at this time of year, getting back in the swing of things next week. If you need us on the morning commute, 788-3093. It has been pretty quiet, but we have had an issue northbound Route 90 at the overpass there. So hopefully that's not causing too many delays, maybe cleared by now. But you can still reach us late in the show here, 788-3093. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 8:30, it's cloudy and 14 degrees in Norway House Cree Nation, 17 degrees with blue skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good morning. I'm Matt Humphrey. We begin with breaking news. The Canadian government says it's imposing a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The tariff matches what the United States introduced in the spring, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it's aimed at protecting domestic manufacturing.
Actors like China have chosen to give themselves an unfair advantage in the global marketplace, compromising the security of our critical industries and displacing dedicated Canadian auto and metal workers. So we're taking action to address that.
Today's announcement also includes 25% tariffs on Chinese aluminum and steel. The move comes as to our east, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been calling for action to protect his province's auto industry. The new tariffs are being rolled out as the Trudeau cabinet meets in Halifax. A Manitoba rail worker is disappointed after a ruling forced him and thousands like him back on the job. Canadian Pacific Kansas City trains began moving again in Manitoba last night ahead of a federal labor board deadline. Days earlier, workers walked off the job to demand better working conditions, grinding shipments across the country to a halt. Matthew Yanchuk is a member of the Teamsters Union in Winnipeg. He says the ruling tramples on his right to strike.
We're being sent back to work without a chance of our legislators getting involved to have a debate about back-to-work legislation. We have a difficult working environment with difficult scheduling, and that leads to a lot of conflict. We're obviously trying to have the best quality of life we can.
The union says it plans to fight that ruling in court. Winnipeg police are asking you keep a lookout for 76-year-old George Surmay. He was last seen in North Kildonan around 8 last night. He's 5'4" with a medium build, gray hair, and blue eyes. When he went missing, he was possibly wearing a gray shirt with beige shorts. And you can see Surmay's photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. A thunderstorm caused serious damage to the hockey rink in the town of Fox Warren, near the Saskatchewan border. Danny Johnston says the storm ripped off one side of the roof, and most of the damage is on the east side of the building, where it's being ripped apart. He says seeing the arena ripped up was gut-wrenching.
It's the only damn building left in town here that was still somewhere to gather and play hockey and figure skate and stuff. That was one of the shittiest things I've ever come across. We grew up here, born and raised here, and the only thing to do in the wintertime was go to the rink. That's all we did. That's our lifeline here.
Johnston says the storm started early in the morning yesterday. The wind snapped trees and branches, and the province says the highway at Fox Warren Access Road was closed off due to the debris. Unions are calling on the Workers' Compensation Board to ease its policies around worker burnout. Only 3 out of the 21 claims that have been accepted by the board since it started covering psychological injuries caused by burnout have been accepted. The Manitoba Nurses Union calls those numbers shameful. Darlene Jackson is union president.
I think we need to talk about the real consequences of burnout. We have nurses who are working with workloads that far exceed anything we've ever seen before. There's a cost to a publicly funded healthcare system. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if this government is willing to pay that cost.
The Manitoba Federation of Labour says barriers for accessing compensation are just too high. It's calling on the board to expand what they'll accept as medical documentation of psychological injury. And finally, a Winnipeg family is warning others that if a contractor shows up to your door with a good deal, it might be too good to be true. Patricia Gunter says her mother paid $3,000 for a driveway makeover. A half day's work was done, and it was left in a concrete mess with cracks hardly filled. You can see a photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Now, Gunter says they can't get a hold of anyone from the company and have had to file a police report.
I love my mom, but these people that are out there, it seems like they're taking advantage of the seniors and young people because they're coming to people's houses with good quotes. Like I even saw the price of $3,000. I thought, oh, wow.
The Better Business Bureau says incidents like these are on the rise in our province and say contractors will sometimes purposely do jobs, poor jobs, or no work at all under the guise of offering a must-have deal. Winnipeg police say they're investigating reports of similar incidents. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right, Matt, thanks.
Thanks for the morning, Marcy.
You as well. That's Matt Humphrey in our news department. Big thanks to him and Alana Cole, who are out there this morning. And thanks to our local show team that's been here live, Brad Lillies and Marshall Hodgins, as well as Dylan Longhurst, who we'll talk to one more time in a moment here. Big thanks also to our associate producers, though, who work very hard on our programs day in, day out, and the weekends and the overnights, just planning everything. I appreciate you all. And our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. And this week, Wendy Parker, who's going to be acting. Speaking of Dylan, why don't we go to traffic first and then I'll round out with some weather.
Yes, and I'll end on a good note. Northbound Route 90, we mentioned a collision earlier in the curb lane at the Portage overpass. That has all been cleared up, so it should be smooth sailing, no delays. So some good news to end the morning on.
All right, thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And finally, the forecast then. We have one of these mornings where we've been at the same temperature all morning long. So 17 still in Winnipeg as we leave you. Lots of sunshine out there. And as I've been saying this afternoon, a little bit cooler, which will be nice after the heat. A high of 23 degrees. Brandon, we're leaving you with mainly sunshine, 11 degrees. Your high 23 as well. And in Thompson, it's cloudy and 13. And it's going to be windy for you today and a high of 19 degrees up in Thompson. Well, take care. Be well, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcuson. We'll talk to you again tomorrow here on Information Radio. But stay tuned because The Current's coming up next on 89.3 FM. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.